Yo, yo, yo. Welcome
What is
back. Good morning.
what
Week
is up?
13. Week 13. We are here. I mean, man, this is really crunch time. We've kind of been saying that for the past couple of weeks, but like you're 1 week away from, what will define probably your playoff run. Some start in week 14, unfortunately, even with the apocalypse coming up, obviously. Hopefully your leagues have made the adjustment to the 18-week schedule and have your playoffs coming up in week 15. But yeah, regardless, it's an important time of the season for all of us here. Yeah, as always, welcome to Crunch Time, brought to you by the fantasy football app by Broto Fantasy. Go to the Google Play Store, your Apple Store, wherever you get your little apps for your phones, your tablets, your Androids. Free. It's free. It's got all the tools you need. It's got, a lot of the tools that we'll be using here today to help you answer your questions. Yeah, with that said, let's get right into some player news. I think the most maybe it's not news per se, but it's the thing that is in the news the most. So let's just get on it right away, get it out of the way. Deshaun Watson makes his debut today. 11-game suspension, back in the team that drafted him, back in Houston. I mean, that's going to be high emotions. It's going to be very interesting. My expectations aren't overly high on Deshaun's first game back. How are you feeling?
I think it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be weird. I think it's going to be hostile. I think, to say the least. Um, you know, at the end of the day, regardless of who he is as a person, like Deshaun Watson, from what I remember, is a good football player. However,
Yep.
being gone for as long as he's been gone and starting his first ever start on a new team, it's hard to really have high expectations, especially, just from a football standpoint. And then you add all the other shit that's going on. And I myself
Absolutely.
don't have high expectations either. I think he can be huge for people in the coming weeks potentially, but this week specifically, I have really little to no interest in starting him. But it's gonna be interesting to see, and there's gonna be a lot of narratives at play, and if he doesn't show up to the table, there's gonna be a lot to be said right from the rip. So he's got a lot on his plate. What'll be interesting to see. I tend to watch, red zone and stuff like that, but I may have that game on the side just to see
I
how
was
things play
low-key
out.
thinking the same thing. Yeah, I
Yeah.
might have a bit of a microscope on that one just because of the narrative surrounding it. A little bit more positive. Yeah, let's use that word. Sure. The Lions activated Jamison Williams.
Mhm.
And I mean, you're wearing the hat today.
And the shirt.
JMO's back. JMO's back. Oh, like represent. I think that's incredibly exciting. Obviously, he's going to enter on a pitch count. I don't even think that needs to be said out loud for everybody to assume that. And if you're not assuming that, assume that he's not going to play more than 70% of the snaps, I would say. Yeah, very exciting to see a polarizing rookie with that much talent and that much speed back on the field. But even in a positive matchup that I'm feeling pretty good about, I think it's like one long touchdown maybe that you'd be relying on to really see benefit of him being in your lineups this week.
Yeah, I myself, I don't have him rostered anywhere. And just this is just a quick sidebar. My quality is kind of garbage right now, so I apologize for cutting in and out to the people that are watching. I have the stream up, and I can see that my stream is going crazy. So just a
I
just a heads
mean,
up there.
you were
But
looking pretty good to me, but I see what you're saying now. Your audio is clean at least. We got that
okay,
going.
all right, that's fine. That's good enough for me. I don't know what's going on, but going back to Jameson Williams, I don't have him anywhere. If I did, I'm not starting him. I've seen a lot on Twitter. There's a lot of excitement. A lot of Jameson Williams finally back, yada yada yada. And I get that Goff has been sneaky solid, and the Lions' offense has been pretty good all year. Um, I'm staying away from it because of the pitch count. Because don't forget, this is his first ever game in the NFL, and it's
Exactly.
it's week 13. It's taken Christian Watson 10 fucking weeks to become relevant, and that's injury and
Facts.
stuff like that. But for a lot of rookie wideouts, this is like the time. This is the Amon-Ra St. Brown breakout stretch. Like, this is when receivers finally get into their groove, and he's in his first ever game coming off
Right.
a major injury. So I'm avoiding him personally. I mean, if you're in if you're in super deep leagues or, obviously dynasty leagues, and I know that there's many flex spots, many positions, all this stuff. Like if you're in a pinch, like, and you kind of have to, I can see the upside there. Like you said, maybe one long score, but you definitely have to temper expectations, because even in a good matchup and even in a solid offense, I don't really have the courage to plug him in at this point in time.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And somebody that isn't on a pitch count but is expected to play on full snaps and full route participation is Jamar Chase. I mean, I don't think there's necessarily any analysis here. They play the Chiefs. It's an old-fashioned West AFC Western shootout. Jamar is a plug and play must start even on a pitch count, because you know that like as long as I've watched football, Calvin Johnson, yeah, for sure, and guys like Randy Moss, but Jamar Chase is a legitimate threat to take any target to the house, and that talent alone vilifies, or that's the wrong word, validates. There we
Sure.
go. Found it. Found it. Validates, putting him into your lineups for sure.
Yeah, I was talking to my dad on the phone before this, and he's like, "Hey, I'm busy." We have Jamar Chase on a team together, and he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna be busy. Like, keep track of Chase. Let me know what's going on. Like, if you have to make any decisions, just make them." Blah blah blah. And I'm like, Chase can run 20 routes and have 8 targets. Like, even if he were on a snap count, it doesn't really matter to me, and I'm not at all worried about it. He said it himself. All the reports have been out there. He's not playing unless he feels like he's good to go, and he felt almost good enough last week and said, you know what, I'm going to make sure I'm looking for the longevity of myself and my career and all this stuff. And then they have the Chiefs, the Kansas City Chiefs. This is going to be a shootout. I hope this is the game that everybody wants it to be. We've seen him light them up before. And hopefully we get to see it again. I miss having him on my team. He is such an amazing player, and I'm super, super stoked to see him back in lineups this week.
Absolutely. And I mean, we'll hop into some more player news as we get into it, but I want to get to some of these questions already. Keep sending all your questions in, everybody. We've got some in the chat, so I'm not going to keep the people waiting. And obviously, we'll cover these news as the questions come up as well. First question of the day. Brian Pereira is in here asking Watson or Olave for your flex spot. He's got Lamb and AJ Brown as wide receiver 1 and 2, which obviously you don't have to make any adjustments for. So Watson, Olave in the flex, full PPR. You've got the Saints playing the Bucks. Obviously not the best matchup for Olave and that offense, especially after getting shut out by the 49ers. They did have a bounce back week before that, but people forget that it was 3 down weeks of production for that Saints offense as well. And Packers at Bears, obviously, who Aaron Rodgers is the owner of, at least a minority share. Yeah. So, I mean, man, I kind of made a joke tweet like 3 weeks ago saying, like, there's no way that Christian Watson, obviously the touchdown streak is unsustainable, but there's no way he even sustains this type of production, because there wasn't much peripherally exciting outside of the touchdowns. And then he's, posted a 28% target share and a 26% target share, and continued to catch multiple touchdowns. Yeah, I mean, I feel pretty good about Christian Watson against the Bears secondary that also just lost Eddie Jackson. Yeah, I think I'm going to go Watson here.
Okay, so I will preface this by saying I don't think it matters. I think you're going to get points regardless of the situation. But Tampa Bay, if they're susceptible to anything in terms of fantasy production, it is giving points to the wide receiver position. They're 14th in the true matchup rank, and they're elite within the top 25 or above. Like, they're stopping everything. But the storyline with Tampa, I feel like, has always been, they have that massive pass rush, they have those linebackers, but they can give up points to the receiver if you can get the ball out. And Olave is a really hard bench for me. I know, he hasn't always,
I agree.
He hasn't always been putting up like monster numbers by any means, but he has a very solid floor. He pretty much owns the targets on that team. And Watson, if you're not getting a 40-yard touchdown, I think the targets could be lacking potentially. And the Bears, you just said they lost Eddie Jackson, but in terms of giving points to the wide receiver position, they've been elite. They've been a great defense, in terms of true matchup rank again, ranking 31st out of 32 teams. So they're pretty stout there. However, like you said, Aaron Rodgers is the Bears' daddy. So it's kind of like, um, I don't think you can go wrong. I see where you're coming from with Watson. I was talking to my dad once again, and I said, listen, you can't bench this because he was benched against me last week. And if he was in, my teammate or my opponent would have beat me. And I'm like, you can't bench him. Like, it's like Tim said it on a podcast one time. If you're playing Pong and you're on fire, you just keep shooting until you miss. And Christian Watson is on fire. And I understand you got to plug him in. I think it's close. I'm leaning Olave, but I have no qualms whatsoever if you do choose to put Watson in your lineup. I just
Yeah,
think
no,
the
I
floor
don't.
is lesser, but the ceiling is just as high, if not higher.
I don't. I don't disagree with that analysis at all, to be honest. And something can be said too about that true matchup rank with the Bears. They're obviously a little bit of a narrative slant with Aaron Rodgers dominating them so much, and a little narrative slant with their safety valve being out. But it kind of does lend more to maybe a negative Christian Watson game script. And a part of the reason that the Bears don't get passed on or don't allow a bunch of receiving production is because teams can just run against them so easily
Sure.
and control the clock and continue to put up points in that fashion. So it just reduces the need to pass against them as well. So a lower volume and a pretty decent cover defense has obviously led to that matchup rank being so low. Yeah. And in a PPR spot too, we know that Olave is going to get peppered with targets. That Buccaneers game way back in week 3 is when he broke the ADOT record of 303 air yards. So yeah, I mean, there is something to be said there, but it's just a little worrisome with the way that Saints offense has looked in general as of late.
Very fair. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't disagree there. It's a tough situation, and that's why the question's being asked, right? So, uh,
absolutely, and that's why we here.
yeah, true.
Let's Mike shouting out your Lions get up in the chat.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Have I watched a Lions game this year? No, but here I am. I got it, so I might as well wear it.
It's crunch time. You got to get in the spirit of the show. Charles Kearney up in here, regular. Good to see you, Charles. Good morning, my friend. Happy week 13. He says, got a must win in need of upside. So obviously projected to score a little less than his opponent. Full PPR, Jarvis or MVS. He's leaning MVS for the upside. He also has Chark and Corey Davis, if that changes anything as far as this one flex play. So you can choose between 4, but I think he's got the 2 main guys in the right spot anyway.
Yeah. I mean, like I was just talking about earlier with game script, if that game with Kansas City and Cincinnati is a shootout, then MVS, we know he's capable of just taking one to the house. And we know that Mahomes slings that bitch. So I'm definitely down for MVS there. You know, last week you were talking about Corey Davis a little bit, and Corey Davis, I don't know, even know if he had a reception. I can see some intrigue there if you're looking at upside. However, I got to go MVS there. But I think Corey Davis has a weird potential to be more of a contender than it looks like. However, I don't think it's really close, but I would go MVS in this situation.
Yeah, game script obviously in his favor, quarterback matchup obviously in his favor. I'm gonna go with MVS, especially when you're throwing darts for a 20-point spike week. MVS is as good as any candidate to catch 3 for 100 and a touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, not impossible, that's for sure.
Yeah, another Chiefs receiver to think about here from Steve Breaky. Sky Moore, Randall Cobb, Gerald Everett. I'm assuming there's no tight end premium. Michael Gallup, and it's half PPR scoring. I mean, Sky Moore has looked competent in just a 2-week stretch, though, and that was Juju's first game back from concussion. Now obviously we just mentioned that we do like the game script and we're hoping for a shootout, but these things can go awry, and Kansas City secondary has looked quite good recently as well, and the Bengals defense is no joke, so it could actually be kind of a sneaky close defensive matchup more than an offensive shootout here. That said, I mean, Randall Cobb doesn't do much for me. I know he's got the capabilities, but as we prefaced before as well, the Bears are very susceptible against the run and a little more stingy against the pass. So I would downgrade him here. I think it might be crazy, but I'm leaning Gerald Everett even without the tight end premium.
The crazier thing is that I was also leading Gerald Everett. Sky Moore, like you were saying, Juju was on limited snaps, and you expect that to increase. Yes, Kadarius Toney is out again, which you would think has the potential to get Sky Moore some more action. I'm a big Sky Moore fan. I have him rostered in every league I can have him rostered in. I think the upside is there, but that really hasn't come to fruition just yet, and I'm not sure this is the week for it. Exactly what you said about Cobb. I don't really have any interest in plugging him in my lineup, especially in half PPR. And then Gallup, he's been playing better as of late. However, that Colts defense is once again pretty stingy to the wide receiver position.
Beast.
And if it's not Lamb, I have a hard time plugging Cowboys receiving into my lineup. So I'm down for Everett. I've been considering streaming him in a couple places this week as well. So I know it's weird to flex a tight end like that, but he has his weeks. He has his weeks where he's getting wide receiver targets, and he's a fake tight end in my opinion anyway. So it's more about where he lines up as opposed to how he plays, and I think he plays more like a wideout anyway. So I'm definitely okay with Everett, especially Chargers Raiders games are always pretty competitive and always close, and they always go down to the wire for some reason. So I think Everett is a sneaky good play this week, even in the flex. It doesn't really matter to me.
Yeah, I completely agree. And to kind of touch on that game script a little bit too, last season, this was that game that led to the overtime win for the Raiders that put them into the playoffs. And they were basically both in that same position again this season where they're battling for a wild card in the AFC West. Yeah, that's an exciting game for me. That's an exciting offensive matchup for me. I like Gerald Everett with a little bit of touchdown upside, a little touchdown juice. I will say too, like Gallup had his best game, his like most targets, most routes last week, kind of was still battling with Noah Brown for that spot, and it only led to like 8.5 half PPR points.
Mm-hmm.
So that was his best week of the season too. So
right.
I'm not yet. I do think there's a little bit of kind of boom upside with Gallup, but I'd play the floor and the similar touchdown boom upside with Everett. So
sure, I agree.
Big Will up in the chat as he always is. Good morning. Good morning to you, Will.
Good morning, my friend.
Constantine, good morning, fellas. Thanks for the Lawrence call last week. Yep, my pleasure, man. Should I go Fields or Lawrence this week? 6-point passing TD. Well, you said the magic word for me when it comes down to analyzing true rushing quarterbacks versus true passing quarterbacks, and that's that 6-point passing TD boost. Lawrence gets the Lions this week. Justin Fields still coming off of a shoulder separation against a tougher matchup in the Packers. I like Trevor Lawrence for another 25-point game.
God, I'm so biased. I'm just like a Lawrence hater. So
we need the alternating opinions, man. It's good to let the people hear.
With the shoulder injury, we're not totally sure what Fields' rushing is going to look like. I personally, from my totally uneducated, random, non-injury knowledge standpoint, I don't think it matters. I think it's just a part of his game, and if he's out there playing, he's going to be doing it. I don't think they should be playing him personally if it's something significant. However, the Bears are going to bear. So, but 6-point passing touchdowns. I mean, Lawrence is going to throw 2, maybe 3, and he's been heating up. As much as I don't like him, he's been playing solid ball. Watching him at the end of that Ravens game last week was beautiful. Even from a biased standpoint. So I'm okay. With Lawrence against the Lions. And Fields is playing injured and just lost what I think is his best receiver in Darnell Mooney for the year. So
100%.
And against the Packers, which they are going to play harder against the Bears. It's just how it goes. So I think I've convinced myself into Lawrence actually, and I will double down on your call. I like that.
Yeah, and I mean, for what it's worth as well, the Packers are ranked 25th in true matchup rank, 14.9 points per game, minus 14.1% over average, but specifically only 2.7 points per game allowed to rushing quarterbacks. That's minus 48.4% under the expected average and 30th
There it
to
is.
rushing production. So that worries me a little more too than just the injury. Obviously that passing volume is probably under 20 attempts now with the shoulder injury and the Packers defense being more susceptible to the run. We've seen lots of teams put up 100-yard rushing performances against them. So, yeah, I think it's kind of a Monty game here. Even if they are losing, you're going to see a little bit of that annoying week 1 to week 5 game script where they're rushing the ball 40 times a game with Monty, even though they're down 13 points.
Sure.
Big Will in here. He's got a good one. I think this is a great one. The Jets defense is just so good, but we'll lay it out there. Kirk Cousins versus the Jets or Jimmy G. I'm sure that was a purposeful phonetic slip from Big Will. But yeah, Kirk Cousins, Jimmy G, Miami. I like the Miami matchup. I like the Miami shootout, the young Padawan versus the Jedi Master and Mike McDaniel and Kyle Shanahan. That's a game I'm going to have close eyes on. I think this is much, much closer than their point per game and rostership totals would suggest. So while I stew, I'm going to let you take it away.
Okay. So this is tough. Because Kirk Cousins, I think, is just perennially underrated and just puts up performances. And, I don't like Jimmy G at all, but you look at Jimmy G's weapons and it's really hard to deny that when in a good matchup, you can plug him in there, like you got Miami's D, who I think is like a top 5 favorable matchup to the quarterback position. And then the Jets on the flip side, which I think are like a bottom 5 or around there to the quarterback position.
5th and 26th.
Yeah. Yep. So I was, Mike and I were talking and he's like, oh, Sauce versus Jefferson. And I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal, but I do think Kirk Cousins can and will struggle against his defense. And I think Jimmy G has a beautiful matchup with the best receiving core that there is once you put, Christian McCaffrey into the picture. Yes, Debo is questionable this week, but I think he's expected to play. And then you add Ayuk, who's been just solid throughout, either whether it's in the red zone or just getting usage. He's doing great. Kittle is Kittle. McCaffrey, it's just stupid. So I'm going Jimmy G, and I can't believe I would ever say that. I think in my world, if I had Kirk Cousins versus Jimmy G, I'd play Kirk Cousins, but because it's not my team, I will tell other people to play Jimmy G, just because, once again, it's a bias.
I love that mental philosophy, man. Yeah, of course.
It's a bias
about
thing,
fun, right? Like, it really,
but
I should preface almost every show with that. Like, regardless of what, I say or Bick as my, beautiful guest today, or whether it be Casanova, you do it for fun and do what your heart tells you. Like, I'm here to provide you all with the tools. We're here to provide you all with the tools, with the analysis,
yes,
with the process. And, these decisions are ultimately yours to make. But obviously, I hope that I have 100% hit rate on every episode, because I want us all to win. I want us all to win, unless you're facing me.
Right.
But I also know that, like, the boys have snuck in here with, like, they're against me in a weekly matchup and, like, force me to answer the question for them because I'm doing it live, and the crunch time guarantee is I'll answer every question. So yeah. Mike, a Petrop brother, is coming in next. Much love, much respect to the Petrop fam. This one's one of the more interesting ones to me, and I'm surprised we haven't seen more surrounding Mike Evans already. I mean, I'm a little behind in the chat. There might be some coming up, but Mike Evans, Garrett Wilson, Devontae Smith, Zay Jones. Choose 3 or alternatively bench 1. I always like to work from the bottom up. Marshawn Lattimore's back.
I have been, when we were talking about injuries, I put him in my injury sheet to bring up, because it's not very often you talk about a defensive player coming back, but that is he's the Mike Evans killer, and that is why Mike Evans is listed as my bust this week, because the Saints are already elite versus the wide receiver position, and that's been without Marshawn Lattimore. So already in a bad matchup. Then the return of Marshawn Lattimore is going to shut down Mike Evans. That's the bottom fucking line. I don't, sometimes
Yep.
things aren't as deep as advanced stats and all of that. Marshawn Lattimore versus Mike Evans is always a show, and Marshawn Lattimore always wins. That's the bottom line. So
Yeah.
Evans is my bust this week because it's a tough matchup. Brady's offensive line is in absolute shambles. The
Yep.
Saints defense is already elite as is. And then you add Marshawn Lattimore. It is so hard to bench Mike Evans, and I understand that. But if you're in Mike's situation where you have the potential to do so, I'm going to do it here. And Zay Jones also questionable, so that is a bit of a worry. However, we're going to find out about that soon enough, in within the next 35 minutes or so. But if Zay Jones is active, then I think it's Zay Jones, Devontae Smith, and Garrett Wilson. And if Zay Jones is inactive, then you have your answer. So,
Yeah, exactly. And I mean,
but
for something to say there, like Zay gets obviously the Lions, Devontae against the Titans, who are the third best matchup in true matchup rank, and Garrett Wilson with Mike Evans against the Vikings, who are certainly susceptible to pass catchers.
yeah,
So yeah, all three have better matchups and have been performing recently. Again,
mhm,
Devontae Smith, as we talked about on the previous pod, 3 consecutive weeks with over 30% target share, leading the Eagles ahead of AJ Brown in targets. Like that's something that you just don't ignore.
yeah,
Yeah, production has been a little down, but that's where you look for signs of what we like to call positive regression because the true target value is there, the peripheral stats are there, obviously, right? Yeah, I really do think, and yeah, you don't need advanced stats, but if you look into the advanced stats with
yeah,
Mike Evans and Marshawn Lattimore, they're not good for Mike Evans.
hmm
And I mean,
hmm
it literally leads to either a 3 reception game for 20 yards, or he's held him to none, or a suspension for Mike Evans. Like
yep,
that's how much Lattimore owns him.
yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
you need to get lucky or hope he finds the end zone in the red zone. Like he's not scoring from
One for
outside
one
the
for one
10.
for one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
dude.
Delusional Tanner, also great handle. Full PPR, sit one. Jeff Wilson, Rashad White, Najee Harris. I think I'm going to sit Jeff Wilson in this matchup against the
I
49ers
mean,
defense.
there it is. You and
Yeah.
I both have our biases on Rashad White. But I don't
Which are
even think it's
positive ones.
I don't think it's bias anymore.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a changing of the guard there. And even if it's a 50-50 split, Rashad White is effective. He's going to get his targets. He's going to get his rushes. I'm not at all worried about that, even against a pretty solid, historically solid Saints run D. And Najee, as much as I was avoiding him all year, whatever. If he's active, I feel like he's pretty much got to be in lineups. So the odd man out to me is
100%.
Jeff Wilson.
Yeah.
Um, I really hope that he'd blow up last week against Houston, and he didn't for some reason. But Mostert's back, which should take away some work from him, at least. Maybe not a
And
significant amount, but enough.
Wilson's coming off of a couple limited practices himself as well.
Yeah.
So he was injured last game and opened up some work for Miles Gaskin, obviously, when you saw him exit the Houston game. Yeah.
So not that Jeff Wilson is necessarily a bad play by any means, but I just think between the three, I'm definitely sitting Jeff Wilson.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you on that one. And obviously, as we said, that the 49ers defense ranked in the bottom 5 for true matchup ranking against running backs. Absolutely horrendous matchup. Boyd's calling you a fake Lions fan. I feel like
Yeah, it's fine.
he has the rights to do that,
It's
considering he
okay.
lives in Michigan.
I mean,
Yeah.
I went out to Michigan and I was like pushing to go to a Lions game, and like he didn't want to go, so like I don't really know who the
Oh,
fake
so
fan
who's the
is
real
there.
fake fan? Yeah, good point. All right, bars are being dropped. Big Will with another one. Half PPR, pick one to flex. George Pickens versus the Falcons, which another thing. Yeah, Najee also gets the Falcons
Right.
for that previous question. Debo Samuel versus Miami has a deep quad bruise. Drake London versus the Steelers. Obviously, Steelers secondary, not great, but Mika Fitzpatrick getting back. They've looked a lot better with TJ Watt in the lineup. Dontrell Hillard versus the Eagles. I mean, you're going to sit probably the last two guys. So for me, it's between George Pickens and Debo Samuel. I
Uh,
can't bench Debo for Pickens. I can't
yes,
do it. I can't.
I agree. A bit hesitant, and I know what I said about Jimmy G and the good matchup. And sorry, I'm laughing because I was Boyd is the one that wanted to go to the game, and I was the one that didn't want to go to the game, and now he's texting me about it and yelling at me. But basically, it is Debo has not been the same Debo as last year, and you know, still solid, but not amazing. Not winning you weeks type player. He's had his moments, but he's definitely more human than he was, and now he's dealing with injuries, which was the storyline heading into last year, that he's always hurt and yada yada yada. I think it's closer than it may appear. I'm also a big Pickens guy, and he's getting his, and he's, for lack of a better term, a fucking dog, and he's got a great matchup. So I can definitely see, the question there. But if Debo's playing, you have to play him. You kind of got to go down with the ship, which, if you want to have big balls and you want to try to be savvy and you want to be smarter than everybody else, then you can go Pickens. And I'm okay with that because he's getting his every week and he's got a great matchup. But, that being said, Debo, we know what he can do. Anytime he touches the ball, he can house it. And, with that upside, you got to put him in the lineup, because if he's playing, then you got to expect that he's going to put up some sort of points. So I would also go Debo, but I do think it is much closer than it may seem between him and Pickens.
I'm not necessarily opposed to that slant there. It probably is a little bit closer, especially with the floor that Debo has flashed this season. As you said, it's a much lower floor than it was last year. And I wrote just earlier this week too, like, George Pickens has long been the most effective receiver in the Steelers offense by far. I mean, it's really not close anymore. Deontay Johnson, maybe we were wrong about Ben Roethlisberger upholding his, and I don't think there's anything to doubt about his separation skills and ability to earn targets at an elite level. But when those targets aren't essentially handoffs at the line of scrimmage, things are getting a little tough for Deontay. So with that said, I think Bick basically nailed everything that I would want to cover there. And I can't bench Debo for George Pickens. But it is probably a lot closer than most are willing to admit, especially this week. NSP7F, pick one PPR, Jeff Wilson, Gus Edwards. Well, we've already kind of went through over the Wilson fade, and I hope you were still listening for that one. I don't hate it being Gus Edwards here. No J.K. Dobbins still again. And last week, at least for one more week, Gus Edwards made what has been a continuously muddied backfield incredibly more clear. Stepped in over 50% of the snaps, over 80% of the rushing opportunities, close to a 10% target share, and they don't even really utilize their running backs as pass catchers. So, I mean, Gus Edwards healthy, which by all accounts he is, no injury designation coming in. He's kind of going to get a close to 3-down workload and workhorse opportunity share. So I'm regardless of the, maybe perceived, it doesn't matter because Jeff Wilson's matchup is basically as bad as it possibly gets. So Gus Edwards here.
Yep.
We did cover this one earlier, and Trey's in the chat asking full PPR, which, Trey, I don't know if you know, but quarterbacks don't usually catch passes. So when you're doing the scoring settings for your quarterback start sits, it's good to know if you have a premium to passing touchdowns. We were saying I was leaning Trevor Lawrence in a 6-point passing premium. 4-point, it's definitely even closer, even with Fields' injury and a perceived bad matchup, a perceived bad game script. I do think it's closer in 4-point because you're not getting that premium. And as Bick said, and I do 100% agree with, I don't think Justin Fields is necessarily going to be put out there in a situation where he can't do what he's been doing. Like, if he can't take off and run and scramble and create magic, then why are the Bears putting him in the lineup? Like, just as a sacrificial lamb? I mean, I guess because Tim Boyle is literally the only other option. But, that said, I think it's a little closer in 4-point. I'm still going to shade towards Trevor Lawrence and what I have to be arguably the highest over under of the week. I do think that Chargers, Raiders, and Chiefs can give them a run for the money, but I see over 50 points on the board for Jaguars, Lions. So I'm going to lean Trevor Lawrence still.
I was going to say before, when we were talking about Lawrence and Fields, that even in 4-point touchdowns, I think I've been swung on Lawrence, which is crazy because this is the first week I would say that. And I was a Fields guy last year. I was a Fields guy going into this year. It's been awesome to watch him play. He's been electric. But if by chance that running does dip, then I think he could be in serious trouble. And because of the matchup, like you said, for both of them, in opposite directions. I think Lawrence is a solid play. I think he presents a higher floor and not even a very similar ceiling. I mean, I don't see Justin Fields rushing for 150 yards. So he, because of that, it's going to be tough for him to put up, 30 plus points. And I think Lawrence has that capability against the Lions, especially with the way he's been playing lately. So yeah, I would go Lawrence regardless of 4 or 6 point touchdowns this week.
Yeah, I love that analysis there. Trey's got a couple in here, so I'm actually going to rapid fire through his. He says full PPR, Watson, Palmer, Slayton, and then hop a couple. Last one, full PPR, Kamara, White, Patterson need to start too. So first one, Watson, Palmer, Slayton, assuming Christian Watson, Josh Palmer, and obviously
Yeah.
Darius Slayton.
Okay. This is like my darlings. I'm a big Palmer fan. Slayton is my sleeper.
Canada boy, so me too.
And Watson, I just said that you really can't sit. So this is a pretty tough situation. I think you have to ride the hottest hand that there is right now, which is Watson. However, you have to understand that he could have a lower floor than both of these guys, but a higher ceiling. If you're looking for floor, Slayton has been, producing wide receiver 2 weeks for 4 of his last 8 games. And then his 5th game was a wide receiver 3 performance. So he's got a solid floor. He has an excellent matchup. If you're looking for floor here, I'm leaning Slayton. If you're okay with taking a risk and riding a hot hand and looking for, a long bomb, then Watson is your guy. And I like Palmer better without Keenan Allen than without Mike Williams. So
Yes.
I think the order that I would go here is Watson, Slayton, and then Palmer.
100%.
And, once again, Slayton's been just the easy wide receiver 1 for that team, just based on necessity. And I think he has an excellent matchup against Washington this week. But Christian Watson, I think you got to plug in your lineup until he lets you down.
I completely agree. I mean, I don't even have anything to add there. So I'll just hop into Trey's last one that he's got. Full PPR, Kamara, Rashad White, Cordarrelle Patterson. He needs to start 2. So you can bench one of these guys. And as the resident Saints fan, I think that you can feel kind of comfortable about benching Alvin Kamara this week. I mean, over 35% of his total points this year. And yeah, he's averaging 15, just over 15 a game, but that came from the Raiders. 40.8 points against the Raiders. He's done essentially nothing outside of that. He's not been an RB1 since that game. Gets the Buccaneers, who, as we said, are 27th in true matchup rank to running backs. Wait, I might be mixing that up. The Buccaneers are. Let me just pull it up real quick.
The Bucks are 28th.
28th. Well, I was wrong, but right. Yeah, they're bottom 4 even against the running backs, and very difficult to pass catching running backs. Kamara just hasn't been getting his between the tackles in the rushing game at all. And as a pass catcher, all of those targets have started to be funneled into Chris Olave because they don't have Drew Brees checking down anymore. They have 2 quarterbacks that, for better or for worse, are willing to push the ball down the field. I think you're playing a little bit of a lower floor with White and Patterson here as well. Kamara obviously has some safety valves locked in, but yeah, I honestly don't have any issue benching Alvin Kamara this week.
Yeah. Based on where you took him and who he is and what he's done, it's really hard. But I think this is kind of a Mike Evans situation where it's like sometimes even the players that you just plug and play, you got to think about. And I have a hard time benching him, but I haven't rostered him, and I looked at how he's been playing, and it definitely hasn't been the Alvin Kamara of the past. So it takes big balls. It does.
This is a risk it for the biscuit start because Kamara has he can do what he did against the Raiders against anybody.
Yeah. But given the matchup, given the recent play and the lack of true opportunity, I'm going White here for sure. And then it's between Kamara and Patterson for me. And Patterson is and Kamara are like the same kind of player, except
Yeah,
Patterson,
right now they are.
has been a bit better for my liking. So I guess I can co-sign the Kamara benching. I'm sorry for you for being in this position at all. It's very tough.
Yeah,
But definitely not what you probably expected at the beginning of the year, but times have changed and we have to adjust. So I think benching Kamara is a tough decision, but it is the right decision for this week. The
agreed.
only saving grace is if he finds the end zone, and you can't really bank on that. So
So Boyd's got one where he dropped a Slayton question as well. We know that we're probably benching Mike Evans for most people, but the options here aren't the best. Hashtag I miss Cooper Cup. He needs us to start too. Deontay, Mike Evans, Traylon Burks, Darius Slayton.
I'm going Slayton for sure. He's in the lineup. Mike Evans is going to be on the bench. And
So Burks or Deontay.
okay, so we have underwhelming Deontay in an insane matchup against Atlanta, or we have the ascending Burks in a less than ideal situation against Philadelphia.
Correct.
So you can take your 4 for 40 from Deontay, and hope it improves, or you hope that Burks can, keep ascending and beat, a pretty elite secondary. I would go Deontay Johnson here.
I think I agree with you.
I think he is both a floor and maybe if we're fucking lucky, finally a ceiling play. I just think, Tennessee, I feel like is probably going to try to keep it on the ground, chew clock, try to beat.
And they can.
Yeah, absolutely. Fucking Derrick Henry and company, So
Well,
I
and,
think
and Eagles mid front is banged up pretty bad right now, right? Like they don't have Jordan Davis, they don't have Fletcher Cox. So
yeah. And I know, Traylon Burks is kind of a Twitter darling right now, and a lot of people are excited that he's playing better. Let's not forget that his touchdown last week was jumping on a fumble.
Correct.
So it's not like it was really planned, and not like he had a bad day otherwise, but it was certainly a better day because of it. So I'm going Deontay and Slayton in this situation.
I don't hate you that either. And I think Slayton is kind of what we talked about. He's that big boom play anyway, which is probably what you're getting out of Burks in this bad matchup that you're hoping for. And then Deontay offers that floor that you need to kind of support a big boom play like Slayton in your lineups strategically, and also Falcons. So a bit of that ceiling, hopefully.
Right.
Lev Brown up in here, kind of an easy one in my opinion. Would you start Jamal, Pacheco, or Cordarrelle Patterson in the RB2 spot? I mean, is it crazy for me to want to start the guy that's an RB8 in points per game? Like I just want to start Jamal Williams. Like it's just Jamal Williams.
I can't believe that Jamal Williams has been doing what he's been doing. I just like it just like doesn't compute in my brain. But once again, until he stops doing it, until he stops getting in the end zone and producing and putting fantasy points on the board, then he's going to be in your lineup. And you have him against Jacksonville. I mean, why not? Pacheco, no chance for me. I don't get it. I'm never gonna get it. It's okay.
No, and he's a 2-down grinder, which is fine. He's a good rusher. He doesn't play third downs. Like he literally doesn't play on third downs. Period. It's why Jerick McKinnon has a higher snap count than him every single game because third downs happen. But Pacheco also, for what is perceived to be a good game script with a lot of scoring, like that's bad for Pacheco because he's not out there on third downs to even get like an audible check down in his favor. The guy's played 11 games and has 4 targets with 4 receptions for 30 yards this season.
Yeah.
Like they don't, if there's a passing play, they just pull him off the field.
You're right.
So I actually think that game script means really bad news for Pacheco because there's no garbage time for him to get those 16 carries for 95.
Sure.
I like Jamal Williams' floor attached to obviously what is an RB1 ceiling over Cordarrelle Patterson, even in what is a decent matchup against Pittsburgh.
Sure. Yeah. I'm all aboard for that.
These standard questions have been shaking me over the past couple of weeks. I've been getting them. All right. Standard start 2 flex. Dylan, Palmer, Kyron, Fournette. LF is questionable for Monday night, and I don't have a replacement if he misses. So automatically there, I'm keeping Fournette out of my lineups against what is a good Saints defense that has been a little bit more susceptible against the run. But I'll go all the way back to week 9, and week 9 was a fully healthy Rachaad White and a fully healthy Leonard Fournette, and Rachaad White had more snaps and more rushing opportunities, but Fournette maintained a decent passing load. So I genuinely think it's more of a changing of a guard than people are willing to admit, because that injury happened at the same time. But yeah, week 10 was obviously the big takeover. Week 11 without Fournette at all. I'm okay benching Fournette in a vacuum anyway in this matchup. So Dillon, Palmer, Kyron Williams, which is really ugly. And in standard, I would usually lean towards the running backs, but I might just think Josh Palmer because he's a better player than both of the other two. Dillon garbage time against Chicago is an interesting one here. I'm not interested in Kyron Williams. I'll say that.
Okay, so I'll be honest. Fournette being questionable, I'm not worried about. He practiced in full. I don't see him being, even though he's questionable, I don't see it being real. And while I also agree that there is an obvious changing of the guard, Rachaad White started that game and he got very similar usage and did better with the stuff that he was given. I understand a lot of Fournette's value comes from catching 6 balls for 12 yards. I get that. But with the other options, because I'm not worried about the questionable tag, I'm going to plug him in there. And then because AJ Dillon has been
trash,
virtually nothing, and Kyron Williams is a running back for the Rams who have their backup quarterback, and it's just a shitty overall situation. I understand they like him. I'm not putting him in a lineup. So just by product of these guys fucking suck, I'm going Fournette. And I like Josh Palmer. Josh Palmer's my guy. So I'll take his whatever yardage, 50 yards, and hope he finds the end zone and call it a day, because I think he's going to perform better than both Kyron Williams and AJ Dillon. And then Fournette, I think both running backs are going to get burned. And if they're in the red zone, I feel like he's going to be the one to be on the field. I could be wrong, but he's a bigger body. He's a bulldozer at times. So, or at least he tries to be. So I'm going Fournette and Palmer. And do I feel good about it? No, but this is what we have in front of us. So,
that is worth noting that he did get a full practice in it. And especially with the Monday game, you get a full practice in on Thursday, Friday, you're pretty much guaranteed to play, right? Saturday is more so of a walkthrough anyway, but yeah. With that said, Dillon was kind of the garbage time dart throw for me here, but I think I'm swayed. I think I'm swayed with that. It's going to be Palmer and Fournette for me as well. The fun stat, really not fun if you're a Rams fan or a Kyron Williams manager, but the Rams had 4 different people, quarterback included, obviously, take rushing attempts in last week's game. Kyron Williams led the team in rushing attempts, but was the lowest of those 4 in yardage. So and it went linearly backwards. So the person with the fewest amount of rushing attempts had the most yardage. Second fewest, most rushing attempts had the second fewest yard. Yeah. So it was just, it's an ugly, ugly situation for that Rams offense is essentially what I'm trying to say.
Yep.
Charles Kearney bringing in an ugly flex question. Full PPR start 2, Paris Campbell, Elijah Moore, or the returning Jerry Jeudy.
I
want to go Paris Campbell and Elijah Moore. That's what I want to do.
I was thinking the same thing.
I think for sure you can actually start Paris Campbell with confidence over these two guys, which is probably one of the things I never thought I would say in 2022. But you can start Paris Campbell with confidence over Jeudy or Elijah Moore.
I mean, it's it's an average matchup against Dallas. He had a very weird. Did he put up a 0 last week? He had a very weird limited stat line. I think he didn't perform well. I was excited about Paris Campbell last week and was telling people to start him, and then he I think he had an uncharacteristically bad week last week, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, 2 for 14, caught all of it, both of his targets. So
that's weird to me. I think that changes, and I like the matchup for Jerry Jeudy. I don't, and he was providing a pretty good floor for a long while in Denver. A couple of bad games mixed in there, but in full PPR, he was getting his. But Elijah Moore, that Mike White shit is really lit a fire under everybody's ass, and everybody's having fun with it. And the vibes, this is such horrible analysis,
And the
but
vibes,
the
but it's
vibes
a fact.
are just really, really strong in that
100%,
locker
man.
room right now.
I love it.
And they're inspired, they're having fun. You know, he scored his first touchdown, free Elijah Moore, you know. So I think it's a risky play because he did only catch 2 balls, I think.
Yeah, and
But
one was the touchdown was on the most broken of
yeah,
coverages.
but you know, I think that matchup it should be pretty fun overall, Vikings Jets, and you know, Judy is coming off injury, and
And it is the
I think he's
Broncos.
expected to play, but there's a chance he don't like. I'm gonna go Elijah Moore as well. I'm not as confident in it as I would like to be, but you know, I think I think it's a good play. I think it's a fun play. And, you know, Elijah Moore could burn you. I do understand that, but so could Jerry Judy for that matter. I mean, the Broncos are a mess. So um, let's go Paris Campbell and Elijah Moore for myself as well.
Yep. We got Boyd getting desperate with his questions. Raheem Mostert in a revenge game. Good point. Oh, week 13 is
It's also,
revenge week.
to be fair, it's also a
Or
Jeff Wilson revenge game, is it not?
revenge game. Yeah. Oh yeah. It's also a Trent Sherfield revenge game. Mike McDaniels essentially just called up Kyle Shanahan and was like, "Yo, if you're cutting anybody, I'll take
I'll
him."
just take him. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like legit. He was like, "I love that team, so give me some pieces of it." Um, yeah, I mean, I think we kind of touched on it earlier in what is the almost the easiest of analysis. Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson will vulture each other. Gus Edwards in a starting role with no J.K. Dobbins is seeing and consistently received what we like to call a workhorse opportunity share, which is above 70% in the analytic community. And Mostert also, the 49ers, man, like the worst possible matchup for running backs. The takeover had already happened with a healthy Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert, but the 49ers are 32nd in true matchup rank, 14.8 points per game, minus 26.6% over the expected or under the expected average, actually.
Sure.
Yeah, just 5.5 points per game to receiving production, 9.3 to rushing production. And
Yep.
Mostert kind of gave up that receiving role to Jeff Wilson as well.
Right.
I like Gus Edwards here.
So, you know, back to like either I think this is close another one of those situations where it might be closer than it seems, even though Gus Edwards has, you know, his locked in role and there's a bit of a timeshare with Mostert and Jeff Wilson. Those are the type of like they're all the type of runners where they're just pretty fucking good at what they do. Like
Yep.
they'll break off long ones and they have strong, you know, rushing yards over expected and all that stuff. And Gus Edwards matchup isn't very good either. So you're kind of
The
splitting hairs a
Broncos is
bit,
rough. But
but
I would like to add that with the 32nd matchup rank, the Dolphins are also without their left and right starting tackles.
yeah, you know, I'm going Gus Edwards as well. Just to make that clear, but it's not like he's a lock. Like he's not going to get
I
much, if
agree.
any, receiving work. And if he doesn't fall into the end zone, you know, you're getting 5 to 8 points. So I
Yep.
can see the question. I can see it for sure. Like, but it's that type of offense where he's going to get 15 plus touches for sure. And he's likely to get the red zone work if they get down there. So I'm down for Gus Edwards. My expectations are not crazy for him this week, but like
Me
you've been
either.
saying this entire time, his usage is going to be elite, and that's what we
Seemingly,
want.
yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, seemingly, I mean, the Harbaugh's known to throw a wrench in the system every once in a while, and obviously Greg Roman is the worst offensive coordinator in the NFL. But yeah, I mean, they're seemingly giving Gus the opportunity share that leads to at least a solid floor in
mhm.
fantasy.
Yep.
This one was really interesting. Start tour fields, and I'll show you why it's interesting. It's 3-point passing touchdowns.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So
Um.
if we're anticipating what would be an efficient but maybe not a incredible blowout performance by Tua against what we have been saying this whole, stream, a very tough defensive matchup, what would you need to really, what kind of stat line would you need to really want to start Tua over Justin Fields? 250 and 3 touchdowns?
Yeah. Shit. Um. Oh God, but Tua, like that offense is
It's
just
true. I know it's so electric and it's so I love to use true matchup rank for obviously I find it to be a better tool than points per game because it tells you
mhm,
not just how much points per game are being allowed to that position, but how much specifically to that matchup. So if somebody averages 15 points per game, but a specific team allowed that person to go for 20 points per game, they allow 5 points over the expected average, right? So I love true matchup rank for that. But you can also use narrative slants, in your favor when looking at true matchup rank because how many times have Tua, Waddle, Hill consistently outperformed their true matchup rank, and it's quite a bit.
yeah,
Randomly, one of the only times they didn't was against the Texans. Another reason why I'm worried about Deshaun. But yeah, I think knowing that you're essentially just relying on Justin Fields' rushing production because you're
pretty
asking for
much.
one TD is giving you, three a 3 point boost, and I highly doubt he gets more than that in this
Mhm.
game. I'm gonna have to lean to a still.
Yeah, no, I agree as well. You know, it is tough. That's really weird that it's 3 points, but um, you know, that is just a passing offense. I feel like Tyreek Hill can't be stopped. Jalen Waddle is, I think, the best number two in the NFL potentially.
Yeah,
That offense is just firing on all cylinders right now. Excuse me. And even though it's not a great matchup, and the touchdowns and all that, I'm gonna go Tua as well. Um, I could be way off base and Fields could rush for 85 yards and score two touchdowns and all that stuff. But I'd rather go with the safer play in this situation. And also, it's also an upside play, like I think,
agree.
um, because he can throw for 250 and three touchdowns with the weapons that he's got. So I think Tua is where I'm leaning here.
Yeah.
Healthy Fields, and obviously we've seen Fields go fucking ape shit, then it would be a different story. But because we don't know just yet, I'm gonna go Tua.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Um, Wozniak up in the chat as per usual on these Sunday mornings. Good to see you back in, brother. Good morning, guys. Hope you all had a good holiday. He needs some help. We all do in these trying times of the season. RB2 and a flex spot filled its full PPR. Rashad White. Oh, nice. We got the matchups. Rashad White or the teams at
We have
least.
the
Tampa Bay
teams.
is. Yeah, I was hoping we got the. But Rashad White, Tampa Bay plays New Orleans. Ezekiel Elliott, Dallas plays the Colts. Kyron Williams, LA Rams plays the Seahawks. Who do the
Let
Rams
me
play?
double check
Yeah,
for
the
you.
Seahawks. The Seahawks. I was on a roll. I shouldn't have questioned myself. Zonovan Knight, New York Giants, actually not the Giants, but the Jets. He obviously plays the Vikings, and Gus Edwards, Baltimore. So we have Rashad White, Ezekiel Elliott, Kyron Williams, Zonovan Knight, and Gus Edwards. We have
All
to
right.
pick. Oh, I mean, they're all running backs, so he needs an RB and a flex.
Yeah. I with immediately it might sound kind of wonky, kind of crazy, like I'm high on something. I'm going Rashad White and Zonovan Knight without thinking twice.
Wow.
Without
Okay.
thinking twice. I think
Okay.
I think it is. I know it's crazy because Zeke is out there, but
That's where I was going to go. It's Rashad and Zeke for me, but I
I,
want to
I'm
hear
not
this Knight
going. I'm not going Gus
propaganda
Edwards,
because I
and I'm
love
not
this
going
kid.
Kyron Williams. But Zonovan Knight, it's crazy as fuck. I get that, right? But he, when put in the game last week, was running hard. He was playing strong. He's got that spunk. Like I came out of fucking nowhere, and I'm gonna show everybody what's good. And not to mention Mike White. We know Mike White, the dump off king. He didn't do it as much last week as I expected, but still solid RB targets. I think he had like three catches for 35 yards, and
No
that
Michael
was
Carter
I was
again.
playing half of the game. And I'm still curious whether it's Knight versus Ty Johnson for the receiving work, but I think both of them are going to get receiving work. And we could see 50 catches for 50 or 50 catches, 5 catches for 50 yards, and then 45 yards rushing. And maybe he finds the end zone. Like I think he provides a really solid floor this week, which sounds crazy over Zeke. I get that. But I don't know. I just got a really good feeling. And I haven't paid too much attention to. I haven't rostered any Dallas running backs, so maybe I'm just disconnected there. I don't like any sort of split going on with Pollard and Zeke. Maybe they've both been good.
Well, they
Maybe you can
have been.
enlighten me, but
They have been, but that split is certainly in favor of Tony Pollard now, even with a what we call healthy Zeke. I mean, he hasn't been healthy since the original PCL tear last season,
Mhm.
right? Like people are like, well, it's he sucked after his injury, but was really good the rest of the season. Well, this is still after the injury. Like, do you know what I
Right.
mean? So yeah, he's still definitely that opportunity share and that split has been very much in favor of Pollard. Last week we saw that snaps and rushing both Pollard, but Zeke was a little more effective, which might, incite Jerry Jones and Mike McCarthy to give him a few more opportunities this week, which is why
Yeah.
I'm leaning there. But I don't hate your analysis, and I'm big on Bam. Like I liked Zonovan Knight as one of those, like make sure you put this guy on your benches.
Mhm.
Stash and dynasty as like a maybe a fourth round pick or as soon as waivers clear after rookie drafts, like unload some fab on them. But yeah, I don't I don't disagree, and it is worth saying that obviously Michael Carter will be held out. James Robinson is activated, but Zonovan was getting a real good run last week and should be an exciting matchup again.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, sitting Zeke is hard, but I think if you're feeling kind of crazy, you should give
I
it a
like the
go.
crazy. I like
I
the
don't know.
crazy. And speaking of crazy, Watson or Dak? I mean, it's Dak. It's
Yeah,
Dak
I'm
for
gonna go.
me.
Watson. Here's what I think about Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson is either gonna put up 10 fantasy points or like 35, and I don't think he does anything in the middle. And the matchup is much more surprising than I would have thought. Um, we addressed it very early, but in case people weren't here, like he hasn't played football in X 2 years. This is the first time he's ever played for this team. All the drama, all the narratives. It's going to be a weird situation. Um, I'm not playing him. But I don't think it's impossible for him to have a fucking sick game.
Neither do
Um,
I.
however,
It's absolutely in the range of outcomes.
Dak is you pretty much know what you're going to get from Dak on any given week. I feel like,
Low end QB1. Yep.
the matchup is pretty solid for the quarterback position, and he's a good quarterback on a good offense. So I'm riding Dak in this situation, and I'm not really thinking too much about it. But I just needed to address that. It's not like Watson is gonna suck for sure. Like, a lot of people want that to happen for obvious reasons, but I'm going Dak. But Watson, I can understand, the debate. We just have to see first how things play out, I think.
I agree. I completely agree. And I mean, yeah, an underlying narrative too is we did touch on it on the Broto Fantasy podcast. Go to your Apple and wherever you get your pods and make sure you download the Broto Fantasy Football podcast as well. But we were talking about it on the Thursday episode, and he enters a hostile crowd of 72,200 sold out fans that want to see him vindicated on the football field for all of his transgressions that did not get taken care of in a court of law. With that said, like legitimately, whatever play comes into his helmet, if he can hear that play at all, will be
Sure.
what he has to call at the line of scrimmage.
Yep.
Deshaun Watson will have zero audible time this weekend, whether they're up 40 or not. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so in his first game back against a defense that averages less than 12 point or 13 points per game, 12.3 to quarterback position has been incredibly stingent, even though faced, yes, bad quarterbacks, but has still allowed fewer points per game than every single one of those quarterbacks averages this season. Yeah, first game back, bad defense, bad matchup, hostile crowd, no audibles, no time to call on the fly. That magic isn't going to be as easy to perform when you can't hear your teammates in direct traffic.
Sure.
Boyd's out here bragging about a dynasty trade. He made a blockbuster. He sent a late first and 23, a late first and 24, a 24 second, and Michael Gallup for AJ Brown, Khalil Herbert, 223 mid to early thirds. Oh, okay, I was reading seconds for a second. Still, I mean, the fact that you got the picks back is just icing on the cake, in my opinion. That's a good move. Mark up in here, PPR pick one, Burks, Judy, Nico Collins.
Ooh. Oh, I love me some Nico Collins. Oh my
I think
gosh.
Nico Collins might not be a terrible answer here. Um, I think Nico Collins might not be a terrible answer here. The Eagles being the Eagles, Traylon kind of having his production last week boost his ranking coming into this week, and that touchdown being on a fumble recovery. Judy in his first game back against the Baltimore defense, who has looked much better since the trade deadline when they've
Yep.
made those moves to bolster the front seven and actually give that secondary, more or less than 10 seconds to have to
Right.
cover,
Some breathing
you
room.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's more of a floor play. I don't think there's much ceiling wide receiver one upside in Nico Collins, but I kind of like his outlook, his production. Over 23% of the opportunities since trade deadline, which obviously Brandon Cooks didn't get traded, but he wanted to. So that's where that comes into play. Is
And
now they're weighing and considering Nico's development over
mhm,
the production that Cooks can give them. Targets are earned, and this is something that Bick and I joke about, but targets are earned on the whiteboard as well.
sure.
Targets are earned in the locker room, backstage when they're writing the playbook. So Nico seems to be the first read on almost every play these days.
Yeah.
I kind
And
of like him for the floor play.
for a few weeks now, he's been leading the team in targets, catches, you know, yardage has been skewed because of like one fucking Brandon Cooks play game that just gets him just above. But he's been the guy there. Brandon Cooks is out this week. Um, so already averaging like 8, 9 targets a game for the past 4 games or whatever it is, he's just been the guy there. He's been producing a solid floor. And I think that floor just grows with the absence of Brandon Cooks. So I'm firing Nico Collins up. I myself had a question that was going to be Darius Slate, no, Josh Palmer versus Nico Collins in my own starting lineup, which I think I'm going Palmer. But I think he's been a very under the radar solid performer. He's going to give you 10 fantasy points in a PPR league, and if he finds the
Yep.
end zone, you get 16. So I
So,
see
so
nothing wrong
here's
with that. Uh,
this is I don't mean to interrupt, but
you're good.
the exact inverse comes in from Mark. Now it's non PPR, and he's adding Peoples Jones and Zay Jones.
I'm going Peoples Jones.
I don't hate that. I think my upside and heart play wants Zay Jones here.
That was my second option. So
But
I'm just worried that he may not play.
the exactly. So I think in a vacuum where we're standing right now with him not being fully cleared, Peoples Jones obviously has the upside. As down as I am on Deshaun, again, that's where the dice roll comes into play. You're rolling the dice with any of these options, really. I don't hate Burks so much, obviously, but the matchup really brings me down on him. And again, it's not like he was seeing high volume. He just fell on a
Yeah.
fumble.
I If I had to rank these guys, it would be the inverse order of how they're listed. So it
Agreed.
would be
Yep.
Zay Jones, Peoples
Well,
Jones,
no,
Nico
I think
Collins,
I
and
would have.
Burks.
Yeah, actually, yeah,
If I
yeah.
know that everybody in this list is
Non
playing
PPR.
football,
Yep.
and
Yeah,
non
I
PPR,
agree.
absolutely. Peoples Jones though, like if Watson does have Watson moments, DPJ can just have one play to he gets 50-yard bomb. Like he's a dog. I've had him rostered all year in my main event league. I've you know he's just quietly producing and he has one big play a game. And so that's why I like him. But Zay Jones on the flip side is also more consistent and well, not more consistent, but he's a baller in his own right. So, it's a toss up. But Zay Jones if he plays and then Donovan Peoples Jones if he doesn't. I'm okay with that.
Let's we gotta I'm gonna try and catch up through the chat here because I don't want to leave these people hanging.
Fair.
Um Brady or Fields?
Fields.
Brady, obviously, yeah, Fields, yeah. Fields against the Packers, Brady against the Saints. Brady has one win against the Saints in his career as a Buccaneer. Saints defense has been looking great. Brady's weapons have kind of dwindled down to Chris Godwin in the passing game, which hasn't lent the way to a super solid floor. Again, it's risky with Fields, us not really knowing, but we did say earlier on that if they're starting him, you have to assume that his ability to rush and his not just ability, but his green light to rush from the coaching staff is a go. Otherwise, I don't think they'd be putting him in the lineup because they know what it looks like when he can't run.
Right.
To our field. Oh, we had this one from Brett. Sorry for he must have been pushing us. Sorry for taking so long, Brett. My boy Jared from DFF. Go check out all of his awesome content as well over there. In my super flex spot, Matt Ryan or Bam Knight. Yes, this is a serious question, and I can understand the seriousness of that question as the Colts face the Cowboys.
I'm a night guy, but it's in a super flex, and I know it's Matt Ryan. It's
I mean,
hard for
he
me.
has had like 5-point games this season
It's
on
hard for me
multiple
not
occasions.
in most scenarios not to put the quarterback in there though. Granted, I don't play it. I don't play super flex stuff, so this is more your realm than my own. I just think in a situation where I have, the opportunity to play a quarterback, I probably am going to do it. I mean, however, you may have a better analysis than I in that
No, I
situation,
mean,
but
I kind of agree there. I think I'm still, and I mean, James Robinson activated, Ty Johnson maybe still getting some of that pass catching work. One game isn't enough for me to really want to just throw Bam Knight into a lineup. I think there is some upside there, obviously, but I also expect the Colts staff to play from behind against the Dallas offense that I do believe can expose that team a little bit, even though they've had solid defensive games. I don't think the Dallas is going to have much issue putting up points, or maybe not putting up a ton of points, but at least maintaining a solid early lead. That just lends Matt Ryan to have to pass more. Now, that could lead to more interceptions and worse things for you in your lineup. But I'm going to go with Matt Ryan in what should be a high volume game script. And he's had better performances recently. So, yeah, Matt Ryan in the flex still, super flex there. Jared, I appreciate you coming in. George here, play one, Swift, CPAT, Christian Watson, Kyron Williams.
uh,
I think I want to go Christian Watson here.
I also want to go Christian Watson. The DeAndre Swift arc has been quite deflating in recent weeks. Yeah, I'm gonna go Christian Watson here. Like I've been saying all day, ride the hot hand. He's the hottest, one of the hottest hands there is in fantasy football right now. Um,
100%.
and yes, you have to be aware of the risk you're taking because most of his action has been on limited opportunities. But he's gaining a connection with Rodgers every single week, and he's becoming more reliable for Rodgers. And we know that he needs that pretty bad. So I would go Christian Watson. And that's that. I mean, if you want
Yeah.
a tier, but I don't think there's any need to tier those guys or anything like that. I think Watson is the play.
George Cook asking my guy in the Lions gear, do I play Jamal Williams over Mike Evans this week? Only other option is Dameon Pierce, but I don't trust him after the last 2 weeks, or really after the last 7. I think Jamal Williams over Mike Evans is confidently the right play. Jamal has just been getting the opportunities. Swift is obviously healthy, but limited, bubble wrapped, less than 30% of the snaps since he's been
Yeah.
back. I like Jamal Williams any given week. I like him over Mike Evans against Lattimore.
So I too like Jamal Williams over Mike Evans.
It is half PPR, by the way.
Yeah, that doesn't change much for me. The thing is, Dameon Pierce is your sleeper, is he not?
Yeah, he is. Absolutely. And I mean, part of the reason that, well, let's touch on it for a little bit. Part of the reason that Dameon Pierce is my sleeper is we touched on what I think that game script is going to be. I don't think there's going to be much passing volume on either side of the football. I think it's going to be a grinded out game. It's a Nick Chubb game. It's a Dameon Pierce game. The Cleveland Browns are bottom 5 in true matchup ranked running backs. I really do like Dameon Pierce here. But do I like him enough to want to start him over Jamal Williams, who has legitimately been a perennial RB1 week in and week out, has had some lower floors, sure, but those low floors end up as like RB16, whereas Dameon Pierce's low floors end up as RB48. So I do like Dameon Pierce, and I do think Dameon Pierce makes his resurgence into the top 15, top 16 running backs this week, where he's been outside of the top 30 in points per game over the last 5. But yeah, Jamal Williams is still my favorite option of those 3.
Cool. Very, very brief. I agree. Very brief sidebar. Jameson Williams, Jerry Jeudy, Sutton, Zay Jones, Antonio Gibson, Najee, all active. So
Lovely. Yeah, so
any
those
questions on
Zay
any of
Jones
those
questions,
guys? Yep.
slam them in. Yeah. Oh, I love it. Good way to break the news. I
Yes,
should have had
sir.
the breaking news ticker ready, but I wasn't prepared. You dropped it too quick on me.
That's all right.
Lev Brown. These are some of my favorites. Start Seahawks defense or 49ers defense this week. So Seahawks get the Rams, John Wolford, 49ers
Yeah.
get Tua. I think it's pretty easy, right? I
Pretty
mean,
easy. Pretty
just
easy.
go against the backup quarterback and the team that can't put up 7 a game. Even if
Sure.
you're playing what we like to call a floor play for DST because you're not getting like turnovers, sacks, fumbles, whatever. It's you're keeping points off the board and putting points into your lineup.
Yep.
Lamar Jackson or Trevor Lawrence. Are we that down on Lamar that we're benching him for Lawrence against the Broncos? I think I am.
Yes. I am. Yeah. Which fucking blows. It blows. I was so happy that I rostered Lamar Jackson after week 3 or week 4 or week whatever it was, right? When he put up back-to-back 40s, I'm like, fuck yes, dude. My MVP bet is gonna hit.
Oh man,
I got Lamar Jackson
believe
for $5 in my auction. I'm like, dude, this is gonna be fucking sick. Ever since then, I've looked for any other option and I can't find anything that's worth it because it's Lamar Jackson, you know. But his weapons are shit. The only thing keeping him afloat is his rushing every single week. It feels like nobody can hold on to the football. I mean, everything is just going wrong for him right now. And Lawrence is on the upswing. It feels so wrong to me based on my biases for both loving Lamar Jackson for fantasy and hating Trevor Lawrence as a quarterback because whatever. But yeah, you got to go Lawrence here, man. You have to do it against Detroit, and it could be painful. You gotta like get ready. But based on the way Lamar's been playing for the past fucking 8 weeks, he's not even cracking 20 in most leagues. You know?
Yeah, and I mean
And
the Broncos are the difference too is the Broncos are 27th in true matchup rank, averaging 12.8 and just 1.1 points per game to rushing production, where as the Lions are 3rd in true matchup rank and average 24.8 points per game to quarterback production in general. So yeah, I mean, the one thing that the Broncos have going for them is Patrick Surtain can lock down an entire field, not just one side of it. And I mean, yes, there's obviously a lot of great other options, but that kid is a special talent and certainly capable of shutting down any opposing offense with his supporting cast. George Cook, kind of a similar one that I think we touched on a bit earlier with this, where we were leaning, if we were leaning Trevor Lawrence over Justin Fields, I certainly hope that we're leaning Joe Burrow over Justin Fields, who is a top 5 quarterback in points per game. And
give me 2-point passing touchdowns. I'll take Joe Burrow.
Yeah, Joe Burrow. Yeah, facts. Mitchell Evans up in here. Appreciate seeing you back, Mitch. Need to start one half PPR. Debo, Garrett Wilson, Christian Watson.
Okay, this is tough.
Yeah, 100%. This is a good one.
Out of these 3, it's just like it's hard. Like we've been following similar trends basically the entire day. You know, kind of fading Fields after Christian Watson. But we also said that if Debo's in your lineup, you got to play him. And
these are good pivots, too.
But Garrett Wilson, man, Garrett Wilson's a dog. He had a resurgence last week with like these are all great options in my opinion. I think I'm going Debo.
I think I'm going Debo and actually a slight edge to Garrett Wilson over Christian Watson if your gut is telling you Garrett Wilson.
I'm okay with that. Yeah. I told one of my buddies to start Garrett Wilson. He sent me a picture of his bench and was like, who should I start? And I'm like, Garrett Wilson. Like he had Treylon Burks. He had other like whatever. Like I like Garrett Wilson this week and moving forward. I just think he's clearly the best player in that offense at all times.
And I mean, other than his like down week against New England in the game that Zach Wilson got benched, wide receiver 15 in week 8 with Zach Wilson, wide receiver 11 in week 9 against the Bills with Zach Wilson, and then obviously the down week, and then wide receiver 5 overall with Mike White against Chicago. I can see Garrett Wilson over Debo for sure, even, but I'm still shading towards Debo.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think there is something to be said about Mike McDaniel knowing, you know, that organization, and we haven't really talked about it too much, but you know, maybe he'll know how to counter him, but I'm not sure Debo is the type of player that can be countered. I don't think you can really like shut him down specifically, especially with all the other pieces. So yeah, you got to go Debo there.
We got 10 minutes, but we got a lot of questions to catch up on. And the crunch time guarantee, we will answer everything. So even if it's past the hour, send them in if you've got questions. I will not leave you guys hanging.
Correct.
Jason Petrop, the second half of the Petrop twins, is in the chat. Slayton or Burks in half PPR?
Slayton.
There you go. Boom.
Yeah,
I hope you were listening to the previous breakdowns, Jay. I think there's some upside in Slayton here this week as the wide receiver one for the Giants. I don't really love Burks' matchup, and certainly think that if he is on the hype train and the upswing that we all perceive, then he's getting the shadow of C.J. Gardner-Johnson in that slot, that big slot role, which that guy's arguably the best cornerback in the league this year,
sure.
and is leading the league in receptions or interceptions rather. So, um,
No, no
DL,
Galladay as well. Not like it matters.
yeah.
But
Yeah, I mean, no Galladay, Richie James, really the only other option. Full flex, yeah, full flex full, PPR, London, MVS, Claypool. Does the full PPR kind of change things here when they're all essentially the
I
same,
don't.
like
I don't
type of
think so.
player? Yeah,
I would
very low
say
volumes with big play upside here.
it's brutal because oh my god. I think. Oh
I
Jesus
think I'm gonna go
Christ.
with MVS for the boom
I
swing upside.
I'm okay with that.
It's just the game script is what I like the
Yep.
most about these
And
three matchups. All
also,
very similar defensive matchups in the sense that, like, the Packers are obviously very good, but Claypool might be the best of the three players.
yeah. I
And
mean,
London has the best matchup, but the worst situation. MVS the
oh
best
yeah,
situation and the easy, like, kind of the
yeah.
easiest
I was
matchup.
gonna go
So
with MVS as well. He's got Pat Mahomes throwing him the football. Um,
yeah.
you need a big play from Claypool, and you need high volume from London. It feels like, and Pittsburgh's getting better. Mariota sucks. Yeah, you got to go MVS there, unfortunately.
Miles Sanders, Juju, Garrett Wilson, or Zonovan in the flex PPR. I'm going Garrett Wilson here.
We are in sync today,
Even
my
though I was
friend.
just even though I was just talking about the matchup with Juju, uh, yeah, I mean, 3 weeks of wide receiver one production were really, really nice, but Garrett Wilson, as I just said, has been doing that over the last 3 weeks. 2 of those weeks with
Mhm.
Zach Wilson as well. Gets a good matchup against the Vikings defense. I think he genuinely has a very similar outlook to scenario as Juju does, being the number one option in what is also projected to be a decently high scoring game.
Yeah,
And then Miles Sanders, it was really nice to see last week, but now gets the Tennessee Titans defense, who has arguably the best run defense in the NFL. And it's going to be a bad game script for Miles Sanders with both of those teams
sure.
capable of scoring.
Yeah,
But yeah.
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 I
Oh, wait,
co-sign. I mean, you can flip a coin with Garrett Wilson and Juju, in my
I
opinion,
agree.
but
Yep.
I'm going like 52% Garrett Wilson, 48% Juju in that situation.
Yep, I agree. Joe up in here. He's a regular, so good to see you in here, man. Morning, boys. Full PPR. Pick two: Justin Fields, Derek Carr. So I guess pick one quarterback. And unless there's a super flex here, then just start Derek Carr and Justin Fields.
Yep.
But if you have to pick one quarterback, one running back, I think Dameon Pierce over Swift is a tough pill to
And
swallow, but the right medicine for this week.
I think, call me
And then
crazy after all we've been talking about. I think I would go, I would consider Fields over Carr, to be honest, even though they're playing the Chargers, but you might disagree. I
yeah.
agree with the Pierce call for sure.
Mhm.
Derek Carr to me, I don't know. You know what it's one of those, I'd rather go for the ceiling on this play for some interesting reason, but I would go Fields and Pierce. However, I feel like I think this is a super flex situation, no?
I mean, that's what
Like
I
both
thought too.
quarterbacks?
Yeah, it kind of seems like that. So if that's the case, then it is just both quarterbacks. I mean, I would start both quarterbacks over the one or the other. But Justin Fields and Pierce, if it's one running back, one quarterback, I think is a safe play as well. I do lean towards Derek Carr, but I'll let you have this one.
Let's go.
Edward Zhang in here, full PPR. Choose one to start: Kamara, Rashad White, Swift, Brian Robinson, Jeff Wilson, Ezekiel Elliott, Rashad.
Rashad White.
Start Rashad White. I think if I'm going to order it, I'm going to go Rashad White, DeAndre Swift, Zeke, Kamara, Robinson, Wilson.
Nothing wrong with that. But I'm going
I know
Rashad
you
White.
feel a little different about Jeff Wilson too, maybe, but I really am. I'm very, very worried about that 49ers defense and Shanahan maybe having all of McDaniel's tricks quite literally in his playbook already. So
Yeah. I mean, in this scenario, it doesn't really matter because there's no chance he gets in the starting lineup for our friend Edward here. So yeah, but I'm going Rashad White. And I'm gonna plug and play him pretty much for the rest of the year. I think it doesn't really matter to me.
Debo or Travis Etienne in full PPR.
ETN
Now I
is
know.
confirmed active.
Yep.
And I'm putting him in my lineup. So there's that.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I know you were a little worried about Etienne's injury, and we might see a limited snap count and things of that nature, which is true. But the same could be said because Debo's also coming off an injury. Has a very middling, but good matchup. Whatever, it's a good matchup, obviously against the Miami defense. But ETN has an incredible matchup against the Lions, and
Yep.
ETN has been nothing but a fantasy super stud since James Robinson left. Kind of a similar vein, since we're talking about him. ETN or Samaji P Ryan. This is literally the text that you sent me.
This is literally the text. Oh, Jesus Christ. Um, I was gonna say to you after the show ended, I'm very surprised we haven't gotten more Samaje Perine questions. Dude, it's gonna sound crazy, man. Okay.
Now I think Bick's frozen completely. So it's going to sound crazy, but he might be lagging until he catches up. I don't think it's that crazy. I will say, kind of what I know Bick's going to get into is that Samaji P Ryan is one of the only backs that when the starter goes down, you can actually guarantee an 80% opportunity share. I don't hate a P Ryan start over ETN this week, but he's also somebody that ETN rather is somebody that I'm incredibly high on in general. I think against a Detroit Lions defense that has been susceptible everywhere, a game that I'm projecting over 50 points. I like ETN to find the end zone. I like ETN as an RB1 plug and play every single week. I am shading him slightly over P Ryan still. We're going to hop into keep going. Wait for Bick's internet to catch up. Trey's asking full PPR start to ETN, Jeff Wilson, Rashad White, Lenny, or Devontae Smith. Thanks and good luck today. I absolutely love Devontae Smith this week, and he's somebody that we haven't been able to kind of talk about because we haven't seen much Devontae Smith questions this week. Oh, look, we got him back. We haven't seen many Devontae Smith questions this week. He's somebody that I love. We were talking about a little bit earlier. The Titans are ranked third in true matchup rank to opposing wideouts. I expect a passing game. It's not really a game script that I see going through the rushing attack for Philadelphia, especially against how difficult the Titans' run defense is specifically. I'm going to actually take Devontae Smith's as a guarantee here. I'm going to put him into my lineup, and I think it's going to be ETN over Jeff Wilson, Rashad White, and obviously Leonard Fournette.
Yeah. I'm back. My internet cuts out for 5 seconds once a day. And it just so happened to happen now. I agree, Devontae Smith. I love his usage post Goddard injury. And I agree that the only way they're going to win that game is through the air. So that's great analysis there. And then ETN versus Rashad White is what I'm looking at. I guess ETN has it all to himself for the most part, and that's the difference maker.
Exactly.
Even though I am a bit worried about his foot and all that stuff. Whatever. Oh my gosh.
Apparently we were bugging about something. Boyd, you can take a back seat. We got the show. All right. You're bugging.
Damn.
Jake from IT says he's got a bomb squad. He needs a guarantee on a bye going into playoffs. Currently in second place. He needs to start 2. T. Higgins, Keenan Allen, Devontae Smith. Ooh-wee. Ooh-wee. Higgins and Allen. It's not that hard. It's just exciting to see a roster with 3 of my favorite players. I think it's blasphemous. Mike was talking about it on the podcast. I think it's blasphemous to have Keenan Allen ranked anywhere outside of your top 15 this week.
Sure. And
Higgins, even with Jamar Chase back, hat hanger of all hat hangers. Higgins' target share coincides alongside another alpha. Jamar Chase, if anything, opens up the field for him and allows T to feast against off double coverage and against the weaker of the secondary members. So yeah, I like T. Higgins in a smash against the Kansas City Chiefs. I love Keenan Allen in a smash against the Raiders, and I absolutely love Devontae Smith against the Titans. But since we were talking about a squad with this type of firing power, I'm going to go with Higgins and Allen.
Yeah, it's as simple as start your studs. And those two are, in a tier above Devontae Smith. So, you start your studs. I mean, that's the bottom line for me.
Trey hopped back in and asked Tua or Dak. Now, I did mention that Tua might have a rough afternoon with his starting left tackle, starting right tackle out of the lineup against a 49ers defense that is obviously the best in the league right now. Cowboys play the Colts, who also house a serviceable and respectable defensive unit. I think I have them back to back in my rankings. Yep, 12 and 13.
Yeah.
So I have Dak as QB 12 and Tua as QB 13 this week. So I'll have to say Dak.
Yeah. Why not? I don't think I think both present a very solid floor. And we even though in on Tua and the Dolphins offense, I think that Dallas offense has firepower of its own. So I'm definitely cool with starting Dak in a better matchup.
Yeah. Pick 2 full PPR, Claypool, Duvernay, Van Jefferson.
Jesus.
I'm going to go Duvernay and Jefferson.
Yep.
Yeah. All three, again, you're looking for big upside. It's full PPR. The volume's not really attached to any of them. I like Duvernay kind of as the de facto wide receiver 1, or maybe Demarcus Robinson on random weeks, but it really is Duvernay as the de facto wide receiver 1, sans Rashad Bateman. Van Jefferson, yeah, it's going to look ugly. You don't want to see how the sausage is made.
Right.
But Van's going to give you full PPR points as the only serviceable pass catcher on a Ravens offense. Or Rams offense.
Rams.
Rather.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I like you just said, I don't love any of it, but you have to do it. So there's that.
All right, let's keep her trucking. We're past the hour, and I appreciate everybody hanging around. We're gonna get to all the questions, so don't hop out of the chat yet. If you've got more, put them in. Fields or Dak 4-point QB. I think we already ran through exactly the same scenario here. Even in 4-point passing touchdowns, I think you can lean Dak a little bit with not really knowing Fields. Yeah, the upside is still tangible. We've mentioned that, but I think Dak is a safer play here.
Yep.
Fields or Lamar this week, then, after I shit on the Lamar matchup against Denver. I mean, it's still Lamar Jackson. It's still Lamar Jackson over Justin Fields almost any week. And I know Justin obviously had those incredible record-breaking rushing games, but I still believe in Lamar Jackson's overall production floor, which is attached to an 80-yard per game rushing production. Yep. And I am worried about Fields in this matchup. So all even, with two kind of Lamar having the worst matchup, but in a better scenario as far as health and consistency of production goes, I'm going to lean Lamar.
Seconded. Mm-hmm.
Need to stream a tight end: Conklin, Engram, Taysom Hill, or Hooper.
Yeah, sure. I was going to go Engram, but
okay. Well, let me hear it out.
I don't have much. It's just kind of like a gut feeling. I mean, it's just a mediocre matchup, and with Trevor Lawrence playing better lately, I don't know.
You know what? I'm actually kind of leaning with you there too. I'm already so in on that Trevor Lawrence matchup. I'll break it down a little bit for you. Obviously, the Lions are a top 10 team against tight ends for true matchup rank. I do have a projected 50-point over for that game. I think, even Bick's little gut vibe instinct makes me want to lean Evan Engram now. So yeah, Evan Engram in what is perceived to be a really, really great matchup. I don't think Taysom, Hooper present nearly as much upside. And if you're feeling a coin flip toss between Conklin and Engram, I think you can lean either way and feel pretty good about it.
The Vikings are a much better matchup for Conklin, and there's that revenge game narrative if you care about that.
I liked it. That's kind of where I was leaning.
He's just not it for me. So.
That's fair. Alejandro, let's get these dubs. You're damn right, man. Start 2 flex: Pittman, Jeff Wilson, Zonovan Knight, or Slayton. Slayton Pittman?
Slayton Pittman.
Mm-hmm. Slayton Pittman. Let's get it popping. Yeah, I know the Colts offense is going to cause a little bit of worries, but you've only seen one game from Zonovan Knight. We've touched on Slayton quite a bit through this episode, so I think you know it there. Hanson de la Garza, my boy, who's always up in here. What's up, guys? Who would you start? Full PPR, Brian Robinson, Christian Watson, or Kamara. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate you, brother. Again, kind of hope you were listening throughout the episode. We did a pretty decent breakdown on Alvin Kamara. We didn't touch too much on Brian Robinson. It was nice to see him kind of get the opportunities and the production that followed last week. But ever since returning to the NFL, he's been nothing more than a lowly RB3 flex play. I think you can kind of keep him in that same range. Kamara downgraded against the Bucks, which we were talking about, and Bick and I are both very in on Christian Watson moving forward.
Yep.
Tim Petrop, Lazard, or Pickens? George Pickens against Atlanta.
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Tim already knows the answer to this because we were talking about it on the podcast, and these are were two of his guys that he mentioned. So he's just filling that in there. Yeah, Tim, bro, it's Pickens. Half PPR start one, Latavius Murray or Jeff Wilson. Neither has a good matchup, which is why I can't decide. Murray might get a little more work, but how much more valuable is that against the Ravens? It is much more valuable considering in a vacuum their matchups are as bad as they can get, essentially back to back. 49ers obviously worse. Jeff Wilson now in a committee with a returning Raheem Mostert and having an injury designation of his own. I like Latavius Murray over Jeff Wilson.
Yep, I would have gone the same direction.
Jared Hines was throwing back in. I mean, I'm sure he might have popped out already, but that was a full PPR for that question. I think we nailed that anyway.
Yeah.
David Montgomery, Rashad White, Jamal Williams, Jeff Wilson Jr. full PPR. He has Cortland Sutton, Josh Palmer, and Debo as well. It's Debo.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so full PPR.
I think it's two questions. I think it's one running back and one wide out.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, man. It's down to Jamal Williams and Rashad White, and then I'm going to start Debo over those other two options. Lock that in, no problem.
I was going to say Jamal Williams and Debo were going to be my two.
Yeah, I agree. Jamal Williams and Debo, obviously an argument to be made for David Montgomery and Rashad. We're high on Rashad, but hard to not be high on legitimately a guy that is an RB1 in points per game.
Until Jamal Williams stops.
Until he stops
doing it, points.
Exactly.
And I'm going to keep riding with him. I don't love him as a player. But he's just putting up points every single week. I watch him on my opponent's bench every single week for some reason. Just like he's just putting up double digits like it's nobody's business. So I'm gonna take that floor and roll with it, and in a pretty solid matchup for sure. And then Debo, once again, I just can't. I don't have it within me to bench him. So.
Agreed. What types of guys are we starting over Mike Evans?
None of those guys for me.
No. Yeah. No. You're still starting Mike Evans there in that situation, Charles. Yeah. But yeah. DPJ or Richie James full PPR. We were kind of already touching on Peoples Jones in this matchup. As bad as I feel about Deshaun Watson, the ceiling of play is certainly attached to all we do know is that he's phenomenal on the football field. Do I have references towards that happening immediately this week? Yes. That said, we know that, and we know that Donovan Peoples-Jones can be a benefactor of that. Richie James, you can't really attach those same assumptions to.
Yeah, I do think he's a sneaky play this week, though. However, I'd take the shot on DPJ. I'm not.
Agreed, man.
I'm pretty excited to see how he plays with a good quarterback, or potentially good quarterback. So
our fellow Broto writer, Jan Luca, up in the chat, Pacheco or Juju in a standard league?
Juju
as well. I agree. It's a passing game. Pacheco's garbage time's out the window. We're talking about 55 yards on what maybe 10 touches. Joe Burrow or Tua? Joe yep. In a better matchup, even if all is equal. Yeah. Matt Ryan or Tannehill? Oh, Taylor Heineke in a 2 QB super flex. Heineke's got the magic, man. I know
I'm for that.
The production obviously hasn't attached itself in recent weeks, but Matt Ryan, you can't really say the same thing about him either, except for the first game back with Jeff Saturday. That was essentially his best game of the season. Outside of that, it's been absolutely terrible as well. Taylor Heineke has actually had a higher floor than Matt Ryan as well, and both similar ceilings, which are, you're hoping on a prayer. I like Taylor Heineke here.
Yeah, I'm down for that.
We had this one earlier, so I'll just reiterate for you, Cade, if you're still sticking around in the chat, it's still going to be a little shade towards Tua, even against a tougher matchup. Both matchups are difficult, and we're just not sure about Fields' rushing upside being exactly similar. And a part of that attached is to obviously his passing. Hasn't had over 27 attempts all season. So,
right.
Bam Knight or Najee. We are not Najee fans on this stream on Broto Fantasy, but it's been really hard to bench him lately.
Yeah,
And
the matchup is good. You expect the volume to be there. He's playing. You know, I'm on Knight more than some people. However, Najee, you just have to expect a pretty close to workhorse role. And against Atlanta, you probably expect production as well. So you got to go Najee. Just plug and play. Don't overthink it in this situation.
And I saw a little further down too, the Joker was saying you can pick 2 for the wide receiver, then Josh Palmer over Cortland Sutton there. That one's pretty easy to decide on that one for you, my brother. Sure. Start 3, Amon-Ra, Godwin, Olave, Scary Terry, Pickens. So we have 5 options. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah.
I'm starting the first 3, I think.
Yeah, that's exactly my thought too. I feel like you have them already set up in there, Keats, in the order that you like them, and we agree. It's Amon-Ra in that great matchup, Godwin with the target ceiling, Olave being the target hog that he is, and your most 2 inconsistent options at the back end with, yes, some good matchups, but you got to go talent over matchup when you have those options ahead of it. Cash a stylist, pick 2, P. Ryan, Chris Godwin, Christian Kirk. Wow.
Full PPR, I'm going Godwin regardless. And then full PPR, agreed. I go P. Ryan. If it's half, I probably lean Christian Kirk. Just because
I completely agree with that analysis.
I think I'm not sure how much we'll see P. Ryan on the ground. Could be a shit ton, but I do think he's going to get dump off after dump off. And, I mean, he has the potential to outscore Kirk with his receiving alone, which sounds kind of crazy. And I know Kirk has a great match. I think a great matchup. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm he's playing Detroit. Yeah, and Detroit. I'm sure their slot defense is garbage. So it's tough, but I'm going P. Ryan and Godwin in this case.
Agree, my friend. Agree. Rob Kane, he played Myers on Thursday, which, as did I, wasn't the best idea. I know better not to chase, but when he was named healthy, I was like, fuck it, I'll throw him in the lineup. He needs a big day, obviously, now from his wide receivers. Pittman, Sutton, Zay Jones, and Lazard, and we know that we're looking at ceiling here. He was cleared to play. I don't think he can really ignore 23 targets over the last 2 games and a wide receiver 1 finish last week, wide receiver 3 overall. I'm going Zay Jones. We're talking ceiling. You need a boom against the Lions. Mm-hmm. I think I'm going Zay Jones. Yeah.
It's not Lazard for sure.
Right.
And then
it's definitely not Cortland Sutton
is active, but I'm really avoiding that situation. And then it's Zay Jones versus Pittman. And you know what? I've been talking hot and all day, and he's hot as fuck. He's hot as fuck. Respectfully.
Sit one. Zeke, P. Ryan, Damian, you're sitting Pacheco. Wow, we could just roll right through that. Sorry, Ryan. Sorry to keep you waiting on that one, brother. Yeah. No problem there. Now, Pittman or Garrett Wilson?
I'm going Garrett Wilson.
Garrett Wilson. Yeah, me too, man. Legit alpha target share, legit alpha scoring, even with Zach Wilson, as we mentioned, and I hope you were sticking around to hear. Ryan up here with a follow-up. Sup, fellas? Long-time listener, first caller. Pick 3 full PPR. Oh, so he's just wording it a little differently. Yeah, sit Pacheco, brother. Sit Pacheco. Standard, Gesicki, Logan Thomas, Jordan Atkins, Daniel Bellinger. I have Njoku and need to pick one up of waivers. Gesicki? It's Gesicki or Logan Thomas.
Yeah.
I don't know. Logan Thomas kind of conceded snaps to John Bates, it seems, even though he is healthy. Gesicki doing the same to Durham Smythe. Jordan Atkins. You know what? This might be the craziest thing, but Jordan Atkins, low-key, has been the Texans' number 2 producing receiver since that little bye-week layoff with Brandon Cooks.
Listen, this might be crazy. He's not listed here. Am I a dumb, stupid idiot for thinking maybe getting Harrison Bryant? So Houston...
No, you're not a dumb, stupid idiot. I actually think that might be a smart idea.
Houston is, ninth most favorable matchup to the tight end position in terms of true matchup rank. And, he's someone that I've been high on for some weird reason for a couple of years now. And, I'm not sure. He just goes right into that Njoku role, but if he does, then I think he could be pretty effective. And these guys, I mean, I think they all have a low ass floor and almost no ceiling. So, I don't think you have much to risk if you just plug Harrison Bryant in there. But if you're not going to do that, then I think I go Gasecki probably just because,
Yeah.
if the focus were to be on the receivers today for Sam Fran, then maybe Gasecki can get some usage. But yeah, it's a tough situation.
16-team dynasty, and of course he's going to spell his name wrong, but Brandon Cooks is out. Tim's asking Josh Reynolds or Kenny Galladay. Well, Kenny Galladay's out as well, and it was trash ever always. So just play Josh Reynolds and hope for the best. Jordan Riley, need help, boys. Do I bench Mike Evans? Yes. For Devontae Smith, yes. As my wide receiver 2, flex position, wide receiver 1, Diggs. Yeah, I would bench Mike Evans for Devontae Smith and Zay Jones. 100%. Yep. Zay Jones is my tier breaker up on the Thursday pod, Jordan. I hope you tune into that Thursday pod. Head over to the Spotify store, Apple, wherever you like to listen to your podcasts. He was my tier breaker up guy that I think is going to ascend from wide receiver 3, wide receiver 2 ECR up into that top 15 today. Love the matchup. Didn't love the injury designation, obviously, but yeah, I feel real good about Zay Jones. Feel even better about Devontae Smith. I would start Devontae over Zay as well. I mean, that's just a terrific matchup and a guy that's been commanding 30% of his team's targets over the last 3 weeks. Hopping right along. We're coming towards the end of it, Bick, so just hang in there with me. We've got a few more to cover.
Listen, I'm here till you need me to be.
I'm absolutely just honestly, my heart is so full. The fact that we've run past the hour and people are still live, people are still watching, sitting in the chat and asking questions. You guys make my whole weekend better. Nick asking, pick 2, Keenan Allen, Christian Kirk, Garrett Wilson. We said earlier, I think it's blasphemous to have Keenan Allen ranked outside of your top 15 this week in his matchup. And I'm in love with Garrett Wilson week in, week out. As soon as he's not as soon. I mean, as soon as he came into the NFL, really, he was my rookie wide receiver 1. But even with a Zach Wilson, Garrett Wilson's just producing. He's the only one in that offense that seems to be able to figure it out with Wilson under center as well. Now with Mike White against the Vikings, I mean, Christian Kirk has a great matchup against Detroit in a game that I project to be an incredible. But I genuinely, I have Garrett Wilson inside of my top 15 and Christian Kirk right around there as well. But the upside there for me is with Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, Keenan Allen and Garrett Wilson for me as well.
Rachaad White, Dameon Pierce. My sleeper of the week being Dameon Pierce. I'm a little higher on him than consensus, obviously, hence the article. And I like the matchup, the game script against Cleveland at home as well. The return of Leonard Fournette. I mean, Rachaad White might be my cutoff. We're talking about RB16 territories, essentially exactly where I have them inside of. So that might be my cutoff. I'm still going to start Rachaad White over Dameon Pierce, full PPR being what makes it all equal, I think. I do think that Rashaad's overtaking of that backfield isn't going to stop at rushing attempts.
Sure. Yeah, this one's tough. I, believe it or not, may lean Pierce.
I mean, he's my call of the week. I probably should leave with him too, but Rachaad White's my favorite rookie ever.
Sure. No, that's fair. That's totally fair. I think you're going to get similar output from either of them. So, it's kind of splitting hairs, it feels like. So I personally go Pierce, you go Rachaad White. I think, but I'm also a Rachaad White fan as well. So if you want consensus, then I can concede on Rachaad White, but I think you're going to get positive results, 10 or more full PPR points from either of them.
Right. Yep. I 100% agree. And I also don't think you're quite going to get RB1 production from either of them too. So I'll say the expectations are kind of in that mid range, and I think you'll be happy with both of their performances. Keenan Allen or Tony Pollard, it's Keenan Allen. Much as we love Tony. Yeah, as much as we love Tony, as soon as, the thing with Josh Palmer's 33% target share that popped up in Keenan's first game back was Keenan played 40% of the snaps. Now, last week, 83% of the snaps, I believe it was, full route participation, full route tree. And obviously Josh Palmer was an afterthought, completely superseded by DeAndre Carter even. So yeah, a full Keenan Allen in a lineup is the equivalent to a full Tony Pollard in the lineup without Zeke, right? I love Keenan Allen this week. Great matchup. What's good, fellas? Half PPR, Kyron Williams or Antonio Gibson? Antonio.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
want no part of that. I know why people are high on him. Yeah, he caught 3 passes and got 30 yards from it. He also had like 13 carries for 28. I'm not into Kyron Williams. The passing work is not always going to be there. Positive game script. I mean, yeah, negative game script probably is going to be on the side of the Rams offense for most of the rest of the season, but it doesn't necessarily lend good things to Kyron Williams, as he's going to have to change in and out of a committee because he's 182 pounds and 5'7".
Right. Yeah, I'm on Gibson as well.
Donovan Peoples-Jones or Jerry Jeudy in his first game back against the Ravens?
I myself, even though I like Donovan Peoples-Jones because of the unknowns and I mean there's unknowns on both sides, but I'm gonna go Jerry Jeudy here, which sounds kind of gross, but I just think he presents a higher floor, probably much less of a ceiling, but I'm more confident in Jerry Jeudy just because we at least have a sample size.
I agree.
We don't have really anything with Deshaun Watson. We have nothing with Deshaun Watson. So as much as I think he can just step into it and make Donovan Peoples-Jones relevant each week. Relevant, like I'm a fucking baby, but I'm gonna go Jerry Jeudy.
I agree. I agree. It's not a great matchup, and I do think there's some tangible upside attached to DPJ, but again, we've kind of been through it. Steelers defense or Tampa Bay defense, full PPR. I don't know that PPR matters. You're going Pittsburgh against the Falcons? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
yep.
The Falcons are not giving up as much actually, like to the defense and special teams as you might think, but the Steelers D has Watt back, and ever since then,
Minka back,
and Minka they've been playing like people expected them to play. So I'm gonna go Steelers D here.
I don't hate it at all either. And what you're essentially talking about is would you rather start two very similar, defensive? Yeah, maybe Tampa Bay a little bit of an edge, but I would say that Dalton's a little better than Mariota too, right? So similar situations, and I kind of like Mariota interceptions, turnover potential more than Andy Dalton's in a team that the Saints are incredibly familiar with. Lamar or Deshaun Watson. It's Lamar for me.
Yep.
Our worries of Deshaun are well documented so far throughout the episode. Full PPR, Rachaad White versus New Orleans. I love it when they put the matchups in, and he even has the home versus away splits. Kyle Grove, you are one of my favorite listeners. Full PPR, Rachaad White versus New Orleans or Michael Pittman Jr. at Dallas.
I just love the Rachaad White propaganda.
I'm into it.
I think there's a bit of risk starting him over Pittman. Just in case things don't go the way the world expects with the Tampa Bay running game, and they could just get stuffed and he doesn't get enough. Like there are situations where Rachaad White is not what I expect him to be, and Michael Pittman, he's going to get his, and that's a guarantee. However, I think Rachaad White, has Tom Brady as his quarterback, and he could get as many targets as Michael Pittman on any given week at this point. So I'm going to value that. I think he's, like we've been talking about all day, he's becoming the guy there. So I'm starting Rachaad White. It's close. And maybe it's a bias thing, but I think Rachaad White is.
I wanted to check it out on the start sit tool on the app because I knew it was going to be close. And yeah, there's a 52.6% shade towards Michael Pittman. So yeah, it's as kind of as close as it can get. And that was kind of where my heart might have been telling me that there might be a little bit more of a safer floor, which gives Pittman maybe the edge there. But yeah, I mean, Rachaad White propaganda continues.
Yep.
Pacheco or Brian Robinson? You're sitting Isaiah Pacheco this week, and when there's no garbage time, Isaiah Pacheco is not a startable player. Antonio Gibson limited. Brian Robinson, nothing more than a flex anyway. Honestly, you're talking about two very, very similar matchups with one guy that actually has something else attached, which is a bit of pass catching work. And even a similar like snap share. Like Brian Robinson gets more snaps and touches on third down than Isaiah Pacheco does. That's for sure. So yeah, anyway, I'm going to lean Brian Robinson here. I think Pacheco's a big fade this week.
I'm going to go Brian Robinson. I don't like either of them. So
Same. Burks, Sutton, Gibson, PPR. Full PPR Treylon Burks in this matchup.
I would take that.
As
I would
bad
take that risk.
as bad as it is as far as points over average and the secondary are concerned when them facing Eagles. I mean, like you're not. Yes, we leaned towards Jerry Jeudy a little bit earlier when your options are kind of just mediocre and you need to roll the dice a bit, but you're not trusting anybody in that Denver offense that isn't named Latavius Murray, which is a wild thing to say, but he's the only one that has a guaranteed path to volume because they can't do anything else.
Yeah.
I don't like Sutton over Gibson even, but I do like Gibson or Burks over Gibson rather.
Yeah, I mean, we talked earlier about how the matchup is kind of shite for Burks, and he's getting a lot of love and a lot of traction, and maybe it's going to be a tough path this week. But you know what? Gibson is a roller coaster, and that whole Denver situation, like you just said, is a fucking mess. So I'll take the shot on Burks. I think his floor is lower than people might believe at this point in time.
Yep.
So if I were to go in order, I'd probably go Burks, Gibson, and Sutton. But start Burks. I mean, see if he can catch fire and prove me wrong. But I'm kind of worried about all of these guys for all different reasons at this point.
100%, man. And I mean, since we do answer all, even though we've answered it, Pacheco or Zay Jones, half PPR, start Zay Jones. Full PPR, Higbee, Taysom, and then Mariota, Daniel Jones. Higbee over Taysom almost any time. Like, I mean,
yeah.
Full PPR actually is a detriment to Taysom Hill because he doesn't catch passes. All of the production that you're getting from him for fantasy purposes are attached to his three carries for 50 yards and a touchdown if that ever happens. So I like Higbee more in PPR. And as positive as points per game would tell you that Steelers matchup is, as we just reiterated not 2 minutes ago, they've been much better in EPA with Watt and Minka as a duo on the field together. I like Daniel Jones more than Mariota this week.
Me too. Even with no options to throw to, I'm a big Daniel Jones fan, and he has rushing upside just as much as Mariota.
Yes.
So
exactly.
take the better situation and the better player.
Mariota has much better options to throw to. Yes, Drake London's a unicorn, but Arthur Smith doesn't care. So, Elliott or Pacheco, Ezekiel Elliott. Yep, we're good on that one. A little tougher, Patterson, Elijah Moore, or Cortland Sutton and Jameson Williams. Full PPR, double flex.
Does that mean start one or start two?
I think we're starting two here.
I would say Elijah Moore and Cordero Patterson.
I agree as well. I need to see it on the field, and probably we said at the very top of the hour in this episode that Jameson Williams is entering on a pitch count, and the only reason that they haven't said it out loud is because it should just be expected. It's his first game in the NFL. He'd be on a pitch count if he was fully healthy.
Right.
Hopping right along. Thanks for putting a lot of input into JP, man. That's what we're here for. I've said it before. I might not have 100% hit rate on this episode, but the most important thing is that I can share my process with you guys so that you guys can then expand your tools to be able to, make these decisions as I do.
It kind of sucks that as we get closer to the end, like we do have to be more like hurt about it. Like we just have to get to the
because I do have lineups to start my team as well. But I mean, again, crunch time guarantee, we will answer them all. And there is something to be said that we could be a little quicker towards the end because a lot of these, once we've expanded the philosophies, are now
analyzed throughout the episode.
Right, exactly. Start one full PPR. Tyler Boyd, Jamar Chase is back. Tyler Higbee, Rams offense. Jerry Jeudy, first game Ravens.
I'm going Jeudy.
I think I think of all those things, the thing that worries me the least as far as their opportunities are allocated is the fact that Jerry Jeudy is healthy.
Yeah,
I think Tyler Boyd with Chase and Higgins has been. I mean, I'll just be honest. He's a phenomenal wide receiver handcuff, but with those two other guys in the lineup and a Hayden Hurst in the red zone, Tyler Boyd's atrocious for fantasy.
Yep, you might get 3 for 40. 4 for 40, and
that's probably what Jerry Jeudy is going to get as well with the upside of added volume.
Yeah. So I'm going Jerry Jeudy, and I don't mind that at all. Between Boyd and Higbee, it's a toss up, I think, probably. So, it doesn't matter though. Just go Jerry Jeudy and don't even worry about the other ones.
Yeah. Pick 2 PPR. Olave. Oh yeah, okay. Olave, Dameon Pierce, Christian Kirk. Picking 2.
I think
That's
this is the
tough for me
first
because
time all day that I think I've advised anybody to start Christian Kirk. I think Kirk has to be a lock between these three guys
I
personally.
I can't disagree with you on that, especially
And
against this matchup with Detroit. And
and
I
you
mean,
know
man,
what?
how can we start Dameon Pierce over Chris Olave, sleeper or not? Like,
Well,
I can't do it.
I
I
mean, you
can't do
prove
it.
good points in the article though. So like, I would say I'm down with Kirk and Olave. Yeah, Kirk and Olave. Let's do it. I do think Pierce has a chance for a good game, like we already talked about. So this could be one of those scenarios where you're going to get production regardless of the situation. Olave is a fucking baller, and Kirk is a semi baller in a really good situation. So I think we go with the wideouts here and leave Pierce on the bench for this one.
Yeah, and I mean, because I am higher on Pierce than consensus this week, I would be remiss without mentioning that he is maintaining a 64.2% snap share. That's RB14, 73.5% rushing share. That's RB8 in the league. And the Browns allow 131.5 rushing yards per game, ranked 23rd, 61.1% over the expected average of rushing production to running backs. They allow 18.3 points per game to rushing production alone. That's ranked first, a true matchup.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, we're talking PPR, and rushing production alone is very game script dependent, right? Like Dameon Pierce for the first time was not the leader in opportunity share last week for the first time since week one, rather. And a lot of that was because he was phased out of the game plan with Kyle Allen under center and the Texans playing from behind so often. So I am again much higher on Pierce than consensus. Don't get it twisted, folks. Like you're starting Dameon Pierce in a vacuum over a lot of guys, but Olave is not one of those guys. Olave is somebody that you should honestly have top 15 expectations on positionally any given week.
Yeah.
A bit of a dynasty question: is OBJ worth a roster spot hold? I'm beginning to feel less optimistic about him at this point. I'd like to drop him for Jalen Warren, non PPR
I
league. That's okay.
I actually feel like this is a redraft question.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah, I feel it feels more catered to this year because I think OBJ is probably worth holding in a dynasty league myself,
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
especially over Jalen Warren. So for me, it
I'm
makes
not
me
sure
feel
about
like,
over Jalen Warren in a dynasty league, though. That was kind of my point.
oh, okay. Well, anyway, this year,
But still,
I don't really see Najee losing his job the way that people do. Maybe I'm off base at least this year. So if we're talking this year and Najee's playing this week, I'm probably going to hold on to OBJ, but um how much of an impact does he have if he signs with a team next week? You're not going to plug him in your lineup for the playoffs, I don't think. So
right?
uh
Yeah. Good
it's kind of
point.
up to you whether you think there's more upside in Warren or OBJ.
An
I don't
injured
know.
Najee Harris would lead to a pretty significant uptick in volume
Yeah,
for Jalen
sure.
Warren, but that's all you're really hoping for. It's not a committee, that's for sure. We got like a few left, and
Yep.
we made the full like 2 hour, 2.5 hour, or whatever it may be. Would you guys start Zay Jones over Rashad and Dameon Pierce at the flex full PPR? No.
I'm not. Mm-mm.
No. And
Nope,
I'm the
not in
tier
this
breaker up
case.
on Zay, so I'm a little higher than you are even. But I'm also the sleeper writer for Dameon Pierce. So yeah, I'm that would probably be right around my cutoff because you're talking about a top. You're still keeping, at least in my projections, you're talking about Rashad and Pierce being top 50 players and Zay being just outside of that. So yeah.
Yeah. I yeah, if it's Rashad White over a lot of people this week, I'm going Rashad
I
White at this point.
I agree, man, and people are very high and excited about Leonard Fournette coming back, and Rashad hasn't looked effective and he hasn't been efficient. Well, let me tell you something. Leonard Fournette's been much worse. Like, so no, he hasn't been CMC, which, yes, his range of outcomes is absolutely CMC, Rashad White, but Fournette has been much worse, and Rashad
Right.
has been more effective. He doesn't necessarily need to be the most effective. It's like when you're speeding on the highway. As long as you're not going faster than the fastest car,
Right.
as long as he's not going slower than the slowest engine on the team, and he's not. So, yeah. Avila back with another one. Zay Jones, Pittman, or Slayton. That one is a lot tougher than the previous Zay Jones
Sure.
question, I think.
Um,
Um, I like Zay Jones over Pittman just slightly.
yeah, I mean it's tough. I never really thought Pittman would be a sit. Um, just because I think he's a baller. I think he's pretty good. And it's just that his situation is kind of garbage.
I'm a Michael Pittman lover, and
You
the
know,
Petrop brothers know that for better or worse.
Slayton is my sleeper. So in this situation, I'm going to go Darius Slayton. Um, However, Zay Jones, like you said, has been gaining traction as well. I think in my article I said Slayton is more of a floor play than a ceiling play. So I think if you want a safe floor where you're going to get 5 catches for 50 yards and maybe I expect it to be better with a great matchup and nobody else to fucking throw to, I like Slayton. If you're looking for, uh, a dart throw that could blow up, we've already seen him blow up, is Zay Jones. Pittman being the odd man out here is not what I would have expected 13 weeks ago,
Me
but we're
either.
here now and things have
Especially in
changed. Like I
half
said,
PPR. That's
yeah.
quite a bit different for Pittman with when you reduce a lot of those, those peppered targets. Because again, his biggest games haven't come on like, 5 for 2 touchdowns and 110 yards or whatever.
Yeah.
It's been 90
Eight,
yards and a touchdown on 10
eight for
receptions.
86. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
exactly. So yeah, so half PPR there is a little bit of a decrease in value there too. And again, I'm just kind of trailing on because I completely agree with everything Vic just said.
Yep.
And I think, you know what? I think we're finally here, my friends. Thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you go download the Broto Fantasy or the Fantasy Football by Broto app, Apple Store, wherever you get your and check out the podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. Follow us on Twitter. I'm at PsychWardFF. He has been at Nick _ right?
It might be
What's your handle?
Bollier _ Nick or something like that.
Bollier _ Nick. Okay.
Yeah, Bollier _ Nick. You're not gonna know how to spell it. Just go to the Broto or Matt's
Oh yeah, he's
tweets
there.
and you'll find me as a mention or whatever. Go to the articles, whatever. Like I'm there. Don't even try to spell my last name. If you want to find me, you can find me. I don't really post football stuff though, most of the time. Mostly my own little shenanigans and my Twitch stream.
Which
So
is always fire.
if you're interested in going to my streams, though, you can find me at Bicknoli on Twitch. So that's more useful than my Twitter.
Okay, wait. We got to cover this one for Elijah, and then we got one more sneaking in at the buzzer. Yep. So George Pickens or Mike Evans, he already knows. He's been listening. Mike Evans does struggle against Lattimore. Arguably like the worst struggle of any receiver against a corner matchup in the NFL. It literally is like it's like 0 receptions or a suspension. That's his range of outcomes against Lattimore. Yep. I like George Pickens over Mike Evans. It's a boom play for either of them anyway. What you're expecting from Mike Evans, if he does play well, is like a 1 for 2 in 1, like stat line. 1 catch on the goal line, fade over Lattimore's head, gets that touchdown. I think Pickens has a bit of a safer floor and a bit of a better ceiling against obviously the Falcons defense. Sure. And at the buzzer, last one, Caden, the Colts fan. Treylon Burks or Nico Collins. A Colts fan having to start 2 AFC South receivers must be a little stingy, but let's get into it.
I'm going Nico Collins.
I'm going Nico Collins too. I think I'm so glad that you said that. This is crazy because in Dynasty, I would never even have questions like this because I would have just stacked so many lineups into having Treylon Burks and ushered out Nico Collins. And 1 week of production doesn't really change a player's value. But this week, no Brandon Cooks against a Cleveland defense. Obviously, polarizing matchup will be the most watched game of the weekend, and has had since they held Brandon Cooks out of 1 game because he was slapping around the front office so much he hurt his wrist. Nico Collins has commanded over a 23% target share. Brandon Cooks under 15. Now it was 18, 18, and then 11, so a little skewed with those averages over that 3-game stretch. But that said, obviously Nico Collins is a legit target earner now. And Treylon Burks may be a legit target earner, but it's on an offense that attempts 18 to 20 passes a game, and in a game script that I think is going to favor Derrick Henry, low volume. Yeah, I'm gonna go. Nico Collins.
Yep.
Oh man, one last one. All right. Ayuk or Pittman? Ayuk. All right, look at him go.
The end. There it is.
Ayuk. And the end. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Much love, much respect. You know where to find us. At Broto Fantasy on Twitter. Check us out. Go to the website. Get the app. It's free. It has all of the stats, everything we gave you. Patreon.com/Broto Fantasy. YouTube.com/Broto Fantasy. Like the video. Subscribe. Check us out. Much love, much respect.
Let's go. Good luck, everybody. Have a lovely week 13.